Can you introduce me as Joker, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Millionth Show. My name is James, joined once again by Henry, who's still in witness protection. And we're going to be talking about Joker, released in 2019, which is 3 years ago now, Henry.
Yeah, it feels like it was. Well, I wouldn't say it feels like yesterday, but this is one of those rare instances where I've seen the film more than you have.
Yeah, now this is a strange one. I think at the time, I was the only person who didn't see this film. Obviously, like I said, it came out in 2019. Everyone fucking watched it.
Yeah,
Even you. In fact, you saw the film
I saw it
twice in
twice in
cinema, right?
cinemas.
That's
Yeah,
mad. I watched this film for the first time, I think earlier this year, or maybe last year. And then obviously I watched it a second time last week just to brush up on it for this episode. But yeah, this is a film that really took over, didn't it? Like,
yeah, man. It was like there was like
like
a whole like cyclone of like media coverage around this film. I remember at the time, like people were like worried it would like start. Well, I don't know. It was like it really varied. Like people were worried it would start protests, or people would start like killing people. Like,
hmm.
oh, Arthur Fleck does in this film, or so on and so forth. Like it's a film for incels or something. But thankfully, that's died down quite a bit now. And especially, I remember I like directly after watching it the first time. Like a lot of my mates, like debating among themselves whether this guy was better than Heath Ledger, even.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, like some people were like going crazy over this film, I remember. But I think after 3 years now that the dust has settled, I think you can like it's interesting coming back to this film because I mean I'd only seen it those two times in cinema in 2019, and now last week I've got to watch it again for the first time in 3 years. And it's interesting really because it's a film that I remember really well because there's just like there's a lot of great scenes in it, but I mean, I don't know how you feel about this film personally, but
It's an interesting one, you know. I mean, we like to keep it light-hearted here on the Millionth channel, you know, and like generally, joking around and stuff. But this is a really dark film, and what you were saying there about. I mean, to be honest, I don't know why I didn't watch it when it first came out. I can't remember why. I think I had a reason, but I just can't remember why. And yeah, I'm not surprised there was that kind of worry about it. Looking back, like the fact that it could have inspired some violence, and there were scenes in this film that reminded me of A Clockwork Orange, and that was a film which literally got banned because it was inspiring killings, yeah, in England at least. So I mean, obviously, Joker as a film draws comparisons with a lot of films. We'll get onto that, but yeah, Clockwork Orange in terms of its reception, and as well previously with The Dark Knight Rises when that came out, there was a shooting in the cinema showing it as well. So yeah, and it was a film that really just it was an instant hit and it was an instant classic, I think, because I think it was so well made, and it's like of a bygone era as well. Really, it was like quite like a classic looking kind of film.
yeah,
It's
it's like
set in the
70s
'80s
or
as far as I'm aware, right? And it has and it really, because it's a film effectively about men's mental health, or one man's mental health, and obviously that's a big theme in the last few years as well, in society. I think a lot of young men really identified with some of the things that were
yeah,
happening in this film, and therefore that's why is such a cultural phenomenon, probably the biggest one of its kind in recent years. I think this film was huge, and no more evidence of that than it actually being the first R-rated film to make $1 billion in the box office. Like a billion. This film made
yeah,
billion.
exactly.
It's
It was the
impressive.
first one. I mean, and also the fact that this had a pretty small budget. It was like 55 million, and like the fact it made over $1 billion makes it like one of the most profitable films like for
Yeah,
its budget size. It's kind
and
of crazy.
I was really surprised by the director, a guy called I think
Todd
Todd
Phillips.
Phillips, right?
Yeah.
And the only other films that I'm aware of that he directed was the fucking Hangover films, which I forgot about. I knew we were going to review this film, obviously, and then I was bored at work, as I was telling you, and I rewatched the Hang. Sorry, I'd never seen it before. I watched The Hangover, and I was really. I mean, this isn't a review of The Hangover, but I just thought I'd mention it because it was the same. That film was like a real disappointment for me. I mean, American humor is generally not my cup of tea, and that film was far from it, man. That was like really like boring, predictable kind of film. But so that's why I'm surprised that a guy like the director of that and made his name from there's a whole trilogy of Hangover films, right? That are like very popular.
I
The
mean,
fact that he was able to adapt and make a film of this genre with this tone, and for it to be as big a success as it has been, very impressive.
do you want to hear something kind of crazy that they almost tried to do with Warner Bros. Tried to do with the directorial um, choice here? They originally wanted to have Martin Scorsese to make this film, along with Leonardo DiCaprio as Arthur and Robert De Niro, obviously to play Murray Franklin. But because DiCaprio was like already he'd signed on to do Once Time in Hollywood with Quentin Tarantino, and obviously Scorsese was working on The Irishman, they couldn't do it, so they had to. I don't know why. I don't know why they went to Todd Phillips next. Maybe they went to a couple other people
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
But
really
this is how
surprising.
he ends up with Joaquin Phoenix.
Todd Phillips got this film. I mean,
It's
and
really,
good on him.
really weird though. Like DiCaprio as Joker, you can imagine that.
Yeah, that would have been quite something. And as well, you've got obviously Joaquin Phoenix ended up being cast as Joker, won an Oscar for it. Joaquin Phoenix as well, vegan, in case you didn't know. So if any of our viewers don't know,
Yeah, I
I've been
mean,
a
to be
vegan.
fair,
I've been a
cigarettes are
vegan for
plant
6 months, and when he accepted his Oscar, which he obviously won for this role, he um, he actually used the opportunity to make a speech about veganism, which is obviously good in my book. So yeah, and this performance, and obviously this is the fourth Oscar-winning actor to portray the Joker, right? Because obviously Jack Nicholson, he didn't win his Oscar for his role
Yeah.
as Joker, which he should have done in my book. But anyway, he won I think 3 Oscars otherwise.
Mm.
Heath Ledger obviously won an Oscar posthumously for his depiction of the Joker. Fucking what's his name?
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto, yeah, won an Oscar
I can forget him.
for Dallas Buyers Club, and then Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for his performance here. And
Yeah, well, he's the second person to win his performance specifically for his performance as the Joker, which
this
is
got a shit ton of nominations as well. I'm looking
yeah.
here, so it won 2 Oscars for Best Actor in Leading Role and Best Music. That's an interesting one. The music for me didn't really.
I thought the music's
It was
pretty good
just
as
like
well.
it was very. It was the music was like full of dread. It was kind of like the Joker theme from The Dark Knight, like that single chord like violin. Just it was very like it was just something that made you feel uncomfortable, which obviously really set the tone for the film. So actually, yeah, it probably did deserve an Oscar for that reason.
Mhm.
Uh, okay, so and it got nominated for Best Picture, unsurprisingly,
Fair enough.
Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Oscars it was nominated for. 2 it won. Very, very impressive. Very culturally impacting this film. And I'm really looking forward to unpack it because this is the first time we're doing a film which is like, I mean, yeah, we've done like films like The Dark Knight, where it is a serious film and but it's like there's still a lot to poke fun at, right?
Yeah, this
This
is
is
probably
like,
the most gruesome like DC films in a long time.
yeah, this is like an R-rated, you know, dark, disturbing sort of film, and it's of a very quite specific genre, as was alluded to before with other kind of films as well, and it pays homage to a lot of those films as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't like I say I don't know why I didn't watch it at the time of coming out, but I remember when I first watched it, it did remind me of certain other things, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And it was like, we'll get onto it when we actually get to the storyline when we break it apart. But I think just this film was, one thing for me about it is the fact that Joaquin Phoenix, he's like, because this film was obviously quite relatable in a sense, or what Arthur Fleck goes through is quite relatable in a sense for a lot of young men today. It's strange to think that Joaquin Phoenix was like at least in his 40s, maybe his 50s in this film, right?
Yeah, that's true.
He's quite old. I mean, because he was in Gladiator, right, which came out in 2000, and I think he got nominated for his performance in that as well.
Yeah.
And so he's been around the block. Sorry, so he's born in 74, so he would have been, yeah, in his 40s for this film, right?
Mm.
And that's quite fascinating to me that a man of that age could successfully portray, you know, basically. So I mean, he's not supposed to be young in this film, right? There's no, but he's still like a relatable thing for. Well, when you think of other films that kind of fit into this category of, you know, Clockwork Orange, Drive, you know, that kind of film. There's always a very young actor. The actor's always in his 20s, 30s at most, you know, and this is like a guy in his later 40s, basically, you know, portraying something that a lot of young men are going through. You know, like that's quite against the grain, which is why I suppose further evidence of why he was worthy of that Oscar, and that, you know, he just really did a superb job with this role, I think.
Yeah, it seems that it seems it was quite intentional actually in the making of this film to kind of include a lot of things which would make it relatable for a lot of people. I mean, uh like I'm trying to not get myself put on a, a watch list here, but like that also like by disaffected people in society as well, like those have been like, abused but no one ever talked about it and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And like, people who lose their jobs and recessions and so on, and like like for example, Fleck loses his ability even get his medication after like the city
Yeah.
cuts all the budget for the social welfare, I think. But
Yeah, I mean, this film is about a man, a lonely man who's just downtrodden by society, and just, you know, and then he basically loses everything, and that's that. This and what this whole film, obviously, this is part of our Batman series, right? Which is,
yeah,
it's already like quite shocking to say that, you know, the fact that they were able to. But obviously, this film is really fascinating, the edge they took on it, because obviously these days it's most films that come out in cinema that, you know, are successful box office wise, are remakes or they're reboots or they're sequels from films from 30 years ago, whatever. And there's continual evidence of that. It's quite hard to make like an original screenplay and, you know, not fill it
100%.
with like all-star names. I mean, say you made this film and it wasn't called Joker, it had nothing to do with the Joker, right? And you just had a film directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix, that was about a lonely man, you know, being. No one, probably not many people would watch it. Unfortunately, it certainly wouldn't have made $1 billion in the box office.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that they obviously, Warner Brothers, they have the rights to Joker, Batman, etc., and Gotham, etc. Those, you know, so they just use this. They make this story, and it's very, actually, I think it's so loosely connected to actually what we know as Batman, and it's so far removed from that, because it's basically a guy telling, it's the makers of the creators of this film telling a story about a man, and then he loses it, he goes insane, basically, or snaps, probably is a more effective term there, and then he becomes someone that everyone knows is like loopy, which is basically the Joker, right?
Yeah.
and
I
and
mean,
in a sense, okay, everyone knows this film is called Joker. It's at the beginning of the film, etc., and it's clowns, etc. It's almost plot twist worthy in a sense, right? Because, you know, you get to the end of the film, he's like, oh, he's the Joker now. You know, it's like, it's almost like, you know, and obviously this film is like conveying a potential Joker origin story, right? How would someone turn out to be like the Joker? So I don't, and obviously we'll go on to rank the
yeah.
Jokers, which is very difficult to do because this is such a unique
Yeah,
portrayal.
it's sort of out of the ballpark
Yes,
kind of.
it's very different,
Yeah.
and but it's still like, you know, how you have the Heath Ledger Joker that everyone's obviously familiar with, and he's like, you know, do you want to know how I got these scars? No one knows his true origin story. Maybe he doesn't even know. This is always a thing about the Joker, like he, you know, is, which is, I'll give credit to that Heath Ledger Joker performance where it is accurate in that sense, where Joker never actually knows, doesn't even know his own origin story, right? So it's interesting to me. I always theorize of this film as being one of Heath Ledger's Joker's origin stories. This is just a potential thing that could have driven him to where he is in terms of becoming a fully fledged Batman villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I do kind of appreciate the fact this film they took it in a direction. I mean, they kind of had to, but the fact that they didn't, in an age where everything has to be tied together in some giant cinematic universe, or
Yeah,
so on and so forth, everything has to link together. They just decided to make a self-contained film because, I mean, they even had to clarify that this Joker would never cross over with Robert Pattinson's Batman. I mean,
Mhm.
Well, we know that now, obviously, bit with Barry Keoghan's Joker, but um, I thought it was quite a bold move just to they just made this and left. I mean, obviously they're making a sequel to it now, but we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, it was interesting to see this. I mean, I guess we could jump into it, to be honest.
No, you're right, and it's yeah, we will. And but I think yeah, you're right. It's a brave direction that they went in. Because like, I mean, speaking like from as a comic fan, this is like the least Joker ever, right? But then actually, I think so many people, because of what they were trying to achieve in making of this film, this portrayal of Joker, I think some people just respected it for what it was in terms of going, wow, okay, this is how someone could, and they just used the name Joker and the city Gotham as a vessel to convey this, societal message basically, and they did so effectively. It's really it's really fascinating to see how that unfolded and how it did get such admiration. Although, as far as I'm aware, I think this divided opinion a lot as well, and it was like quite a controversial film in terms of like DC fans. But I think it's great that they made this as just a standalone, single film. But unfortunately, with the way film studios are, especially Warner Brothers, it made $1 billion. So even if they make a shitty sequel, just because of by virtue of that it is a sequel, it will draw in people, and obviously I think we'll just touch on it now because I don't really want to revisit this conversation. But
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on what we've discovered about the sequel so far?
Well, so far we
It's
know for sure that it has well, it's called Madness of Two in French, but I can't be bothered to pronounce it. And they've decided to make it a musical, which sounds bad on paper, but I don't think it's meant to be. I think that doesn't mean it's literally going to be entirely a musical, I hope.
Mhm.
And Lady Gaga has been cast as Harley Quinn, so
Yeah.
far as I know. So with I'm assuming, actually I know you know, Joaquin Phoenix is going to return to reprise his role because it would make sense. But um, I don't know how they're going to do that, considering where this film finishes off. Like, because they might meet in Arkham or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's going to be very. I'm not encouraged at all by. I mean, I'm someone that likes to avoid knowledge about films prior to seeing them as much as possible. And listen, we have no idea when this film's actually going to be released. I
I
don't
think
think
it's
it's even really.
2024.
It's not even in pre. It's not even production, right? So it's like this is something on the horizon, on the distant horizon. But still, it obviously has a lot. I don't want there to be a sequel for this film. This film works so well as a standalone piece. I think it's going to be very hard to make a sequel that does it justice, right? And from what I've heard, yeah, Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn doesn't fill me with any hope at all. Um, I'd like to be proven wrong, but I think when you already have, Robert Pattinson's Batman, you've got the Snyderverse happening as well. I think a third kind of Batman film series running parallel to the other two as well. I just don't think that's necessary. I think they should. I wish they'd just focus all their attention on Robert Pattinson's Batman. Just go and make that fucking universe happen. Make it good, and just don't just put all your attention in that. You tried Snyderverse, it failed. Fuck it, just leave that in the past. Joker just works as a great standalone film. We don't need a sequel. Just keep it as it is, and just Rob Pattinson Batman. That has so much potential, such a high ceiling, and I don't want to get too much into that because we've got that review coming up in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, I'm not encouraged by anything I'm hearing about the sequel. To be honest, I mean, but it's inevitable, right? This is the unfortunate way things are. It's money talks, right? And this film made $1 billion, so of course they're not going to say no. They're going to make a sequel, no matter how bad it is, just to get in those dollars. And I don't know, maybe it's going to be one of them that's just better not watching, better just avoiding. To be honest,
Yeah, maybe. Well, anyway, so
let's get into the storyline then, eh?
it's got a good intro, I've got to say.
Well,
Like,
yeah. It opens up basically in Gotham, although
it
it's
opens up straight
obviously New
away.
York.
Yeah.
And there's a garbage strike that you hear on the radio, and Joker's applying his makeup.
Yeah, you get two things at once here. It's pretty good. Like, introduces you basically. Gotham is going to shit, and also you see Joker, in his day job, also preparing his. Well, he's not Joker yet, but Arthur Fleck is preparing his makeup.
Yeah,
It,
Arthur Fleck, by the way. Why did they go with that name? Do you have any idea why they went with the name Arthur Fleck? That didn't really make sense to me.
I don't know. I'm not really sure actually. I couldn't find anything on it, but
I mean, I wasn't expecting to go Jack Napier or whatever. They had to make some kind of name for him. I wonder where they got that from.
I'm not sure really. They probably just went rounds at the office giving
It
suggestions for
doesn't. It
names.
doesn't sound right to me. I'm sure it's paying tribute to someone. But anyway, so he's applying his makeup, and then he's going out and he's like with a sign, right? Like for
Yeah,
some
doing some advertising as a
yeah.
clown. Don't know how that
And
works.
yeah, his sign gets like stolen, and he runs after the kids. Some kids basically take his sign off him,
Yeah, well,
uh,
they're like
knock him over, and
teenagers.
yeah, and he's like chasing through the streets into an alleyway, and he gets fucking battered by them.
Car,
Uh,
yeah, man. Like my back hurt just watching him beat the shit out of him.
oh, it was my face hurt, man. The way he like slams into that board, and it's like a wooden board as well, man. That
Yeah.
was fucking painful, man. And yeah, and he's just getting kicked, getting the shit kicked out of him in this alleyway, and they run off, and he's just left there, and it's like already, you're like literally a minute or two into this film, and you're already. This film's only 2 hours long, by the way. They really do such an effective job at making the most of the time that it's got. Because two
Yeah, in
minutes,
the first, first
in
2 minutes.
2 minutes, you're already feeling sorry for this guy. You want to go there and help him up, but no one does that. It's just in this society of people that just and again, it's very much reflective of today's society. You see someone getting attacked in the street or a fight or something, no one goes to help. Everyone's just whipping out their phone, making a video of it, and going viral with it. No one goes to actually help the victim. And already, literally with 2 minutes into this film, and you're already there. You're already immersed, and you're already emotionally attached. Basically, it's so
Yeah,
effective.
I
You're
think that
already like
I think
just
that even reminds me of I think this happened in New York. It was some major city in the world where someone had literally like been stabbed and they're bleeding out on the sidewalk or the pavement as we call it over here. And they people will literally just walk past them for hours until they died.
yeah,
They just
yeah,
step over them. But anyway, but right after you just see him, the aftermath of him being beaten up, you got that like giant title card of Joker.
that's right.
Just pretty
Yeah,
cool.
very
I
just in your
still remember
face as
the
well.
name.
It's like there's it's just so aggressively bold in your face. It's like wow, it's powerful. And then you have your Joker laugh. He's like laughing like in his therapy, right? You just get shot, and it's really interesting the direction they went with the laugh. They obviously the laugh is such an important thing to the Joker character. So, and the fact they took it in the direction that they did, I mean, it's obviously shown to us later on, but
Yeah.
that it's the result of well,
Yeah, it's like a mental condition. I mean,
supposedly.
yeah, it's actually a thing that can happen to people in real life, like this sort of like pathological laughter. It's like, well, in like apparently under like high stress situations or like,
Mhm. Yeah, whenever
yeah,
I read it as like whenever he's nervous or anxious, then it triggers this. So that's a real
yeah,
thing, is it?
yeah. I mean, and it can actually be really bad um, because it stops like because it's so like happens so spontaneously, it can stop you like your pattern of like breathing properly,
Hmm.
which can lead like to like some it can either lead to damage. I don't think it can lead to death because I don't think you can possibly laugh for that long, but I wouldn't know. But yeah, it's like it's quite like almost disturbing to watch because it's like laughing is like painful for him almost. Like it's really that's one of the things I have to give Joaquin Phoenix a lot of credit for, the fact that he's able to express with his face so much. Like he's able to like laugh at the same time as it's like you can clearly tell he's not like, happy about anything. It's well paining him. He's like on the verge of tears sometimes.
Yeah, because he's laughing. He's like got this like rasping kind of aftermath of it as well, and he's like coughing as well. Obviously, he's fucking smoking like a chimney as well. He's a 40 a day man probably. Um, Another thing I'm getting in common with it. I mean, I don't. Joaquin Phoenix isn't a smoker as far as I'm aware.
He had to smoke. He had to learn to smoke a lot for this, though.
Yeah, right. So I mean, Again, yeah, vegan smoker, join
Yeah,
a club.
this goes
Club
back to
there.
this goes back to like Wizard of Oz where they made Rudy Garland like smoke like and like lose loads of weight for the role, and then in this case he had to lose. Joaquin Phoenix had to lose so much weight, man. You can see this.
That was straight. We'll get onto that because I want to go into that into more detail. But I mean,
Yeah, but
we're in the we're in the well, is it therapy or counselling? Well, I'm not. I think it's
bit
isn't the
both. But
psychiatrist something like that, right?
yeah, whoever they can get him his meds. That's all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's not really there for I mean, he's trying to open up. He's trying to talk. He's got a scrapbook or a diary, sorry, with him, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like
And
scrapbook, diary, joke book, everything.
yeah, that's right. Because he's like he wants to become a comedian,
Yeah,
stand-up comedy, and his therapist is there, and she's we it focuses. She's flicking through his pages, and you get the line written down. I just hope my death makes more sense than my life.
yeah.
Very
It's in like senses in like American money. I mean, there's kind of it's actually it's pretty funny if it wasn't so dark as well. Like
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's almost satire, and it's just it's so powerful,
there's quite a few things in this that like that it's like stuff that's like funny, but you shouldn't laugh because it's like you know it's quite like it's this is like again like I said it's a really dark film, but the that line I always remember so well, especially like he writes it like extremely bold.
Yeah, it's bold. It stands out there. And obviously it's they come back to I think two or three, once or twice throughout the film. But yeah, it's just like and already I really admire how quickly they're able to put you in this guy's mindset. It's just straight away. We're 5 minutes in the film now. He's suicidal. It's like this is something which this kind of depth of character development usually takes quite a long time. But literally within two scenes, or well, three if you count him applying the makeup, within three scenes, you've already you're right in there with him, and
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think at the end he's just asking for more medication, right? And he's already on seven as it transpires. So this he's not in a good place,
yeah,
The-
and he's like that's another thing they do quite well in this is they don't like they're not rushing through it, but they do jump from scene to scene quite seamlessly. I feel like right
right.
after because it goes like it's him getting beaten up to the title card, then immediately it's like him laughing in his therapy, and then next thing we've got him on the bus.
Yes.
Public transport. Their life is terrible, but
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So yeah, he's on the bus and there's a kid in front of him. He's turning around to look at him and he's like making like clown faces to make the kid laugh.
yeah, he's like trying to make the kid laugh and all like,
His mum
and
gets
he
pissed
gets
off,
cut
like,
down.
"Oh, leave him alone."
Well, to be
Uh,
fair, like if I was that kid's mum, I'd also be like weirded out.
well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing in today's society. This is the thing about this film. Like to an extent, like everyone is somewhat related. The mum, yeah, of course. Like there's a lot of. I mean, and this is the thing. You want to say I'm like trying to think of a careful word to choose there, but again, this is the thing.
Stranger danger,
People are so it's like so easy to jump to conclusions and stuff, and obviously all Fleck is trying to do there is make a kid laugh and like have some happiness in his life, just even for a split second there, and it's just taken away from him by a woman who's just afraid. She's on this bus, she's with a kid, she's probably not in the best place either.
Yeah, you got a strange
um,
man, like
and there's just
didn't
a person behind her who is just makes her uncomfortable, and not through any bad intentions, but people just don't want to take the chance these days, and it's just again just
yeah, like no one trusts each other in Gotham.
yeah, exactly.
Like
You're right in
this
there.
is yeah, this is a really good one thing this film does really well actually, especially like it's probably one of the best ways they paint Gotham really because of the fact that you
Mm,
see it from the bottom up rather than,
yes,
we follow Batman, he's obviously, Bruce Wayne and so on and so forth, like from a billionaire's perspective.
that's a
Like it's
great
kind of
point.
like he's like flying over it, but this is like the ground view.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah. um and obviously, yeah, so because obviously he's put in this awkward situation, so he starts bursting into laughter, and this is where he gives the lady in front of him a laminated card which explains his condition, right?
Yeah. Like the
And
fact that, is like I mean this comes in like later on because, tries to give a card, but he can't, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. And then yeah, so he's basically making his commute back from work, which involves walking up the fucking
Yeah,
tallest
that's
flight of
all.
steps I've ever seen. I really hope that's not real.
Yeah,
Although
because
it probably
they
is.
yeah,
Must
they
be.
put that yeah, that's in a lot of the we'll call it promotional material, but like it's
Yeah,
always
that's
a
right.
lot of the time it's him in front of those stairs, like
Hmm.
I don't know, like there's probably like a lot of stuff that's meant to symbolize, I guess, like struggle in life or something. But the fact that you have to go up there every day, like and get to back home as well, like God,
Although, and then the very next shot is he's walking back down a slight decline. So I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
far
But
enough.
anyway, yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, obviously that's meant to symbolize everything, a lot of things. But I'm sat down. I'm like, fuck that, man. I would find any alternative to going up those stairs, man. Like, oh man, fuck that shit. But obviously, they play quite an important part later on. And yeah, as you say, and I'm always seeing, it's just so iconic those stairs. Joker on the stairs, obviously later on in the film, not necessarily this shot, but still just there. Yeah, it's just he's got the world on his shoulders, man. Like going up these stairs. He goes to his back home to his flat. There's no mail. We see he's living with his mum, who's basically not able to look after herself.
Yeah. I mean you also find out in like well, later on, but not too later on, the fact she's also a bit loopy as well, which kind of
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Yeah, she's far from a good place as well. Um,
Yeah, and then
she's basically a potato couch, right? She's just old. She's very lonely as well. Obviously,
Cass.
yeah, she's not all there either. But anyway, they
Yeah,
kind of
'cause,
sit.
like
Sorry.
yeah, I feel bad as well because like you get he's obviously taking care of her. He's got like probably doesn't make a lot of money. You can probably guess from his job as well. And then
Mm,
like the only fun thing in his life is when the Franklin show comes on.
that's
You
right.
see like and like this is another thing I noticed about this film. There's a lot of obviously like the colors of it are often really dark. But one of the only bright ones that there are in this is the like the blue from the TV.
Hmm.
Always gets on him, and it like I don't know, he's probably got terrible eyesight by now, but you know, um, yeah, it's like Murray's like his only sort of like light in his life, kind of. That's why he
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
gets so much
exactly. Well,
funding.
for both of them, her mum as well. They're like both huge fans of the show, right? So they just sit there and watch it every night. Um, and he has a he basically fantasizes about being on the show, and he's there in the audience and stuff. Like obviously Murray Franklin, sorry,
Played by
Robert
Robert
De
De
Niro.
Niro. He's looking
So
pretty good in Taxi Driver too, yeah.
yeah,
But I
man.
mean, to be fair, I mean it's no secret there are some similarities between those. But this this film was like quite they cited Taxi Driver, Raging Bull as well, and King of Comedy as like sort of
Yeah.
a pretty big influence on this. And also, this is partially inspired by The Killing Joke, but to be
Hmm.
fair, a lot of Batman films there as well. But also, especially Raging Bull was quite important to Joaquin Phoenix in his like um well, it kind of was one of the films that sort of made him like go on in his acting career as well. Like, and he was like a huge fan of Robert De Niro as well. So
Hmm.
in a way, this is kind of um in a way, it's kind of true, this sort of scene for him, especially because he's now working with Robert De Niro on a film.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And when I watched this film on Thursday night, I think I watched it. I watched Taxi Driver immediately afterwards, just so I could because I remember we watched Taxi Driver together, didn't we? A few months ago, a couple
Yeah,
of
we
months
did.
ago. And I was watching, I thought, fuck, man, this is the same film as Joker. So I really wanted to I just really I wanted to watch them back to back, just to kind of feel the vibe and actually, to be fair, I think it's quite late now. Now that I've sat and done that, I think it is quite a lazy opinion that I held. For I was just saying, yeah, yeah, it's just Taxi Driver remake. Very lazy actually, because obviously there are a couple of moments where they pay very obvious homage to it, but you know, actually, but that's really all it's. Of course, it's the same kind of template as, it's a lonely man like going through life. It's set effectively in New York City, but even things like the garbage strike, that's actually it's not explicitly said in Taxi Driver, but it's something that was happening incidentally as they were filming it. So it's effectively the same world, right? And yeah, I mean, obviously, I read as well that one of the they put Robert De Niro in this film to actually like avoid plagiarism accusations, like just, because there are obviously some like really scenes which are explicitly, you know, calling back to films like King of Comedy, like Taxi Driver, but to a tasteful level, and not to such a point where it just becomes like Joker is very much its own film and has its own story, and
Yeah.
it's very effective in delivering that. So yeah, although this particular thing, the whole Murray Franklin show thing, actually reminded me a lot of Requiem for a Dream, where I can't remember the name of the character, but it's the Jared Leto's mum. It's the mum, and she's watching this reality show as well, or I think a game show actually, and obviously the film Requiem for a Dream has four people, falling further and further. Anyway, and her thing is like she's really obsessed with coming on the show, and I think she's actually invited onto it, and then she becomes obsessed with losing weight and gaining other people's approval, etc., etc. Being a somebody, right? By receiving approval, or at least just by being seen by people, by complete strangers, and it's just, and it taps into that, and I think that was also actually very much a callback here as well with this whole the Murray Franklin show with his mom and with Arthur Fleck himself. That gave me a lot of vibes from Requiem of a Dream as well, from that particular character. So it does a really great job of just like tapping into those almost subconsciously, like tapping into those themes from other like iconic films within this kind of sub genre. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I quite like this scene as well because it really there's a part in this where he when because Murray gets he gets his attention when he says like, "Oh, I love you, Murray," and
Mm-hmm.
then somehow, I mean, obviously this is meant to be all in his head because he obviously isn't actually there. Like he immediately picks out who it was from the crowd, gets a spotlight on him, and then like the audience sort of like finds it funny that he lives with his mum, and then like but as soon as Murray Franklin also says, "Oh well, I also used to live with my mum," then like the audience is like, "Oh, because it kind of shows that really it's more dependent on who you are in like the echelons of society rather than you know how well, like what you've actually done because the audience as soon as they find out Murray did it, suddenly it's okay, but this guy's like, oh, what loser.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah, yeah,
in his
exactly.
mind, that's the way it works.
Yeah, it's really like just like really tapping into such a huge. It's one of those things. Yeah, it's like, oh, as long as the guy on the TV says it, as long as the media says it's okay, then it's okay for me to do as well, right? So it's as long as it has that kind of so-called like public approval, then it's okay. So yeah, exactly. It is like who he is. He's and
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I'm a man of the house, blah blah blah. I provide for. It's like, oh, and then suddenly he goes from being laughed at for doing that for being empowered to being empowered just because, yeah, this celebrity says so, it's really like it's really interesting how many how it's all just the questions that starts to ask, about various things happening in today's world, obviously. Um. Anyway.
Yeah,
So
he
yeah.
invites
So
him down, and then he actually has a chat with him, basically. It's a
that's right.
brief chat, but still.
That's right. That's right.
It's like, oh, you're my hero, so on and so forth. It's like, I'd do anything to have a kid like you, but then I don't know at what point it cuts off, but then it's like it cuts back to him watching it. It's like he's just
Yeah, and it's just like, and you can see, and it's just after all he wants is, and it's clearly, his dad's not around, right?
yeah,
Um, so obviously, this is, and all you're seeing there is basically, well, that's all he craves, he just wants
yeah,
someone to give him a hug, and just like, oh, I'm proud of your son, basically. That's just all this character craves, and it's, again, just there's so many people, so a lot, basically from broken homes, or like, except the father left or whatever, which Murray Franklin's like, yeah, my dad went for a pack of cigarettes. There's so many people that experience that as well, and it's just, and then there's obviously, a few people as well who have dads and like have a great relationship with them, and I'd like to think that something like this, just gives people like that a perspective so they can really appreciate what they have. Um, and then obviously for people that don't have that, it's very relatable. Um,
But you can see as well that Arthur Fleck kind of, yeah, he really holds up Franklin as kind of, this he's almost like his surrogate father figure that he looks up
yeah,
to, sort of. This, which may be why he goes into comedy to start with.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
looking for approval from Murray essentially.
yeah, 100%. He's basically that's a role model for him. When you are fatherless, obviously you're going to look
Yeah,
for
some
a strong
figure.
male role model, and this is how one thing leads to another. But yeah, in Arthur Fleck's case, he sees this guy on TV who has an image of being successful and confident. Has a fan base. He's like, really like he's someone to aspire to be like. But then, very quickly scratched me inside. It's like, oh no, well actually, my dad went for cigarettes, and I'm the same. I had to look after my mom as well. And it's like, oh wow, like it's almost like the mask slipped, because that's what's expected in today's society, that that men are very, that nothing can phase you. You're strong. You can deal with anything. You face the world, and then obviously that's so often a mask, where there's many things that are troubling every man, but obviously it's not like a man thing to speak about those things. It's like you just project an image of success as much as you can, and or fake it till you make it, effectively. And this film is just exposing that quite a lot in like a very explicit way.
Yeah, but this film, I mean, obviously it tries to make you feel bad for Arthur Fleck and so on. One of the things I feel that's not so obvious that I noticed, especially this time. I didn't really notice the times before. When he is like when he's talking, when he gets singled out, when he's talking about like he takes care of his mum, and specifically he says like my mum told me I was put here to like like as a ray of like joy, and to make people like laugh and smile and so on and so forth. I feel bad because he kind of, I noticed a lot of the times when he talks like this, and also yeah, especially when he's trying to make people laugh and so on, he's kind of got like a child's mindset in a lot of ways. Like he speaks like a kid sometimes, like,
Mhm.
which is probably indicative that he's probably like you see in this film he's not actually very smart, to be honest. Like he kind of he's got a lot of like childlike qualities about him,
Yeah.
and but he's also still like mentally ill, which might have contributed to it and so on.
Well,
But
100%, because obviously, without, I mean, we'll get to it, but obviously it's revealed later on that, details about his childhood, and the fact that he probably didn't really have one, right? Or certainly not one that he looks fondly back upon. So, those childlike qualities still showing through is just of a childhood that he never had, and he still has that within him because he never got to fully experience it, as children deserve to.
yeah,
Definitely.
well, right after this you get to see his sort of like bones protruding from his back. You
Yeah.
get to see his the amount of weight he lost for this man. He's got like um he's in his job. He's putting his like giant shoe on for his clown performance.
Hmm.
And his mate, like, well, his mate, quote unquote, comes up to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard you got jumped. I feel bad for you. And, you should take this with you just in case. I mean, you can pay me back later." Randall, I think the guy's name is, and he gives him a gun, right, inside like a bag, and like
Hmm.
Arthur's like, "Well, fuck, like, I can't have this. I'm a clown." Um, and I think right afterwards, like, he also introduces this. I forget his name, but he's just a short guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The what's the word we can use? Dwarf, midget.
A
Is it
man,
midget?
a vertically challenged individual.
Yeah.
Um, he,
And he's English as well, right? He's got like a
yeah,
British accent.
he's got a very obvious accent that he's doing.
Yeah. But
Um,
I got to say, yeah, about his back, man. I don't, as much as that is like a shocking thing to see, and it's like, oh, really focuses in on it, and obviously respect to Joaquin Phoenix for losing the weight to achieve that look, and probably went a long way towards, the people at the Oscars, man. They love a weight transformation performance, don't they? But
yeah, certainly do.
like, to be honest, I don't really think that was necessary. Um, I don't think it was necessary because that's the only scene we get to see it. Obviously, yeah, okay.
You do get to see it later as well.
He's underweight, he's malnourished. That's obvious. but I'm not really sure if that was actually necessary in terms of the message it's trying to convey throughout the rest of the film. It was almost like a little bit distracting for me. Obviously, it's impressive to see that Wacky Phoenix had the ability to lose so much weight for this role, but I'm not really sure that it was, like I say, just I don't really. I think it was quite unnecessary. I mean, just if he had just an average build, I don't know if that would have made a big difference.
I think I don't know. I think
Especially because
it's
he's
I
like
think
the thing.
it's
If he was younger, if this is like a child or a young adult that is like this kind of, that would be it. But the fact that he's like in his 40s, right? It's kind of like, well, that's kind of where he's at. It's not really such a shocking thing. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
I don't know. I thought it quite added to it because
Hmm.
I mean, especially even if he is in his 40s at this point, it shows like even by this point he still can barely like feed himself and so on and so forth. Like it's just your average citizen from Gotham. It's how
But do
bad
you,
everything is for them.
yeah, but I don't think he's like that because he's poor, right? There's plenty of poor people who eat junk food and are therefore like obese or overweight, right? So I don't know.
Yeah,
For me, I don't know. It's just it didn't really. I think more. It's more to do with the fact that perhaps he's bulimic or he's got some kind of, I don't know, some kind of some condition. That I'm not really sure. This is the thing. This is why I think this bit, it's just more confusing and it's like more ambiguous than it kind of. I just didn't need to see that. I mean, and that's the only scene where you. Well, no, you do see him a little bit
you
later.
see it later on as well. But I
True.
mean, this it's not like the main focus point of this scene, to be
No,
honest.
no, no,
Like
of course, but it just it,
it's
it just well, no, the camera
it's
makes
just
a point
there.
of dwelling on it, right? It like really lingers on it just so you can like. But I don't know if that really, for me, I don't think that worked. But I mean, it was
I don't
effective
know.
for
You're
you.
the first person I've heard this from, but
Yeah. So what did you? How
well,
did you like? How did it sit with you? Because I'm not really.
I don't know. I think it just adds into the fact that you feel sorry for him. You know, it's like there's a reason why a lot of like humanitarian aid posters includes someone like a kid who's like. I mean, obviously this guy's obviously not a kid like you mentioned.
Well, that's my
Includes someone
point.
who's like
It would be more
malnourished to the
effective
point of
if it was a
starvation.
far younger actor or like a far younger character that he's portraying. But it's kind of less. I don't know.
I don't know. I assume you went to buy he's in his like late 30s, who knows? But I didn't really think about it too hard, and I don't think most people I knew who saw this really made much of a point of it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
why I kind of just go, yeah, and maybe this is an attempt at showing that the guy is meant to be younger. Maybe he's supposed to be in his 20s. I don't know, but yeah, obviously skipping meals and stuff, that's a sign of unhealthiness basically, and it's an unhealthy thing to do and something that people who lack confidence do, and that leads to especially with women, I think, where where they become bulimic, etc. And it's a very serious problem, and it's something that's created by. So maybe now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's just like something for.
like a catch-all, not
Yeah,
good for
it's
men.
yeah, exactly where it's like, okay, this is something there. It's not necessarily um particularly like crucial to this particular character, but it's, since this is a film that's already exposing a lot of things about mental health, etc. It's also, yeah, like you say, like a catch-all, like it's including that kind of side, which is very, and again, it does tie into the themes of this film, where it's like, people go, especially women, I think, go on Instagram and they're like, they see these perfect models and images and they want to achieve a certain look. They'll find a model that looks a bit like them and they're super skinny or whatever, so they want to like be like them or look like them, have that impossible beauty standard, Barbie dolls, etc., etc. I mean, you can make a whole other podcast about that. And this is a subject which I'm not even particularly, experienced in or anything myself. Like the obvious like person that I am, but still, it's still obviously a very current issue and a very big issue with like the misrepresentation of like what's achievable through social media as well. And even though social media doesn't even exist in this world at this point because it's set, in the last century, it's still like touching on subjects through that. Okay, and now I'm beginning to, this is how I would interpret, now that I'm thinking about and talking about the skinny back thing, or like the fact that he's so underweight, is, I suppose, obviously referring to that as well, I guess.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I just took it as like another symptom of him being mistreated, so forth,
Mm.
um, by both the previous people in his life and by society as a whole, I guess you could say. Um, but yeah. jumping back into like the scene itself,
Yes, the guy is his colleague. Introduces him basically to the gun, and this is very much like a taxi driver moment because that's like a pivotal moment in the story of Travis Bickle. You know, where he's I mean,
introduced the main
he's not put in a life threatening situation in the film at that moment, but he's like he's got a colleague who like, yeah, you should carry a tool with you, you know, and like I've got a guy who can hook you up, and then there's the famous scene with Martin Scorsese in the back seat, and he's like, yeah, I've got a Magnum 44, you know what that can do to someone, blah blah blah, and he's like, and that inspires Travis Bickle to go purchase a few weapons and then go and practice them at the gun range, etc. Kind of I'm worrying myself now as someone who's like just recently taken up attending a gun range every now and then, but
Yeah,
still.
you've definitely put yourself on some sort of government watch list, but life's
Well,
throwing me a weird
anyway,
direction.
and obviously, listen, in America, there's a very different stigma, I think, around guns and firearms in
Mm.
general. I think that's a very much more of a a
Cultural
controversial
thing, isn't
topic,
it?
but it's very debated and like something that everyone is very aware of there. So I think the impact that it makes, and obviously it's something that can be, it's something that men lacking confidence, young men. Again, it goes back to this thing, young men with like mental health issues, etc. That you know they find power perhaps in like having a gun or like it just makes them feel more safe and more. I don't know, because there's a lot of representation attached to that as well, right? So all the heroes
Yeah,
in like films, etc., James Bond or Arnold Schwarzenegger, whatever, they're always they're armed, they always have a weapon, and it's like more powerful or more manly. I don't know, but I
yeah. Or
guess.
you have bodyguards if you're rich enough.
But
Yeah,
anyway, that's the point in Taxi Driver. It's like he starts, he gets some guns, and that's like a change in his life, and obviously sends him down a path. I'm not going to spoil the film if anyone has seen it. If you haven't, watch it now. But still,
yeah,
it's a very pivotal part of what that character goes through, and then the path he goes down because of that um, marriage. Like basically a lonely man stumbling upon a gun, etc. And this is basically what Arthur Fleck goes through. Although it
yeah,
goes down an interesting path as well, not necessarily the same one as Taxi Driver, but a very like. But anyway, so it's a guy who gives him a gun, and then he
yeah.
goes.
His shorts colleague is like, oh yeah, the boss wants to see you, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But this like I remember the scene quite well, and there's like this seems like when writing it, because his boss is basically having a go at him, like
Oh,
he's the
sorry,
same way,
sorry, so sorry. Just before we do meet
yeah,
the
go on.
boss, the big guy makes a
Yeah,
joke about
yeah.
the midget, and then
Oh
and
yeah.
then Arthur Fleck does this like fake out laugh. It's so good. I don't know. It's like that's one of the bits where it's like it just injects a little bit of humor into it, but also like quite dark. It's like
Oh yeah, they're
it's like,
like,
oh yeah, and again, it's amazing actually thinking about it because Arthur Fleck, he's obviously a victim of society, but then in a sense, in that moment, he's showing he's also part of the problem in a way because this midget obviously has got and all of these character, every character you see in this film is troubled, right? And this midget obviously has some obvious disadvantages, right, in society, and is obviously the point of fun. This is why he's a clown. He probably can't get a normal job elsewhere, right?
yeah,
Especially
he'll never, yeah, no one will ever take
this
him seriously or
society
someone.
within this world. So obviously you've got and then the guys like the big clowns like laughing at him, mocking him. Arthur Fleck is laughing at him, but then it's a fake laugh as it transpires. So, but again, it's
Yeah,
like
and
as
also,
far as Fidget is aware, everyone's laughing at him, and even though Arthur Fleck doesn't care, he doesn't find it funny. Obviously, he's still just joining in to like be part of what is expected for you to do. You understand?
yeah, and also one thing I also wanted to point out as well with this, like, this is probably one of the scenes of his laugh, which is like most like memorable, is he's like walking through the corridor on the way to seeing his boss, but he like is like kind of disturbing almost because he's like he's like cackling and so on, but then like in like a split second he
Yeah.
just stops. It's like pulls like deadpan face.
Yeah, it's like the mask. It's like the
His real
facade. Even
emotion.
even though he's so damn it, and he's obviously all his colleagues can see the state of him, but then they're
They
just
don't
trying to
want to say
fit in.
anything.
They're trying to be like one of the lads or whatever.
Yeah, and also like when he actually gets to talk to his boss as well, like
Yeah,
he's like this I don't I mean I'm not old enough to have gone into any serious employment before, but they I assume this is meant to be somewhat relatable in that um like when you just have a boss who's like unreasonable because this guy's like saying, "Yeah, I'm on your side," but this guy wants his sign back because you like ran off with it, and he's then like Flick, he reasonably says, "Why would I steal his sign? I got jumped, and everyone else like knows about this." And his boss doesn't care. He's like, "I'm going to take out your paycheck and so on."
Mhm.
And this part is unintentionally quite funny for me because like you see as as his boss is talking, like he gets like more and more sort of like phased out, like you can't hear him so well, and like
Mhm.
Fleck is just like slowly like grinning more and more, and he's like staring at him. And he's like that just reminds me of sort of like that face that people pull when like they're not actually they're not listening to anything, they're just thinking about what would happen if they punched the person they're talking to.
Mhm.
Which maybe is what he's thinking, or maybe he's thinking of killing him. Who knows? But it's also like as it gets more difficult to hear his boss, he's like also saying stuff like, you know, the other guys,
Yeah.
like some are really uncomfortable around you. Like I can't be associated with that, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's a very powerful scene, and yeah, people have definitely been there. Even perhaps not just in workplace situations, but also at school. You'll have a teacher that will like give you shit for something, and this boss is just giving him shit. Although this is in a situation where obviously Arthur Fleck he's like providing for his mum as well, so he's got a lot of. And as it turns out, he really loves this job, right? It's like one of the only because he's through his job you see him with the children he's able to like it's already with
maybe,
on the bus,
yeah,
it's showing he likes. Although again, it's like it's just one of those things. It's like with comedians as well. You get a lot of most comedians are actually like depressed. Like I was thinking quite a well-known example is Jim Carrey. Who's like obviously we can say like one of the funniest people in the world, right? Like he's just someone automatically associated with humor.
yeah.
And man, it's like it's now I'm thinking about it, it's like it's amazing the twist, like how dark Batman like films and characters have got. Because I'm just saying Jim Carrey. And I remember only a few weeks
Remember
ago
he was the
talking about
Riddler, yeah.
him as the Ridley. It's like what a different world that was, man. Um,
Yeah, I know. And like this is, I mean, especially the fact
Sorry,
he's
but
kind
just to
of
finish the point, Jim
yeah,
Carrey's,
gone.
he's talking about mental health. He's always, like, even though I was bringing so much laughter and entertainment to people, I was, deep down, I was, he was depressed. He was like, and it's all an act. And this is the thing. It's like, these like comedians or like people like trying to make people laugh, and we'll know some ourselves, like people around, class clowns, etc. It's like it's
Yeah,
usually
exactly.
it's done just to have that quick moment of approval to make yourself feel better, and then like you just go back to whatever emptiness. It's like, and this is obviously very much what Arthur. It's not always the case, of course, but this is definitely what Arthur Fleck's going through. He just wants to bring joy to other people because his life is so joyless, and so lacking happiness that at least he gets to experience some through giving it to others by being a clown.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd have to say as well, like this is another thing with the film is kind of like another one of the people they're trying to target is like people who are kind of like this. They're always they're known as the funny guy, or especially if you're a class clown as a kid, that more often than not they're doing it because they yeah, like you said, they through bringing joy to other people they can kind of get a bit for themselves. But the fact is they can't obviously do that 24/7. So as soon as they go home, for
Yeah,
example, they're like especially when he goes back to his apartment later on, he's just like he's like there's nothing left for him basically. Like his only life that he has is when he's making people laugh, which is why he tries to do it so often.
that's right. Um, and yeah, anyway, so his boss is giving him shit for losing the sign, etc. And yeah, and he like just basically zones out. And then the next thing we see, he's just taking it all out on some trash, a bin outside, and he's just like kicking the shit out of that, and just that's his only release. He can't obviously say shit to his boss. He can't say shit to anyone. He doesn't want to either because he's like, he just wants to. He just has to do it in a quiet corner and just have a breakdown there, like quietly, and then just reappear as just someone who's just existing. Like that people won't look at. Worry.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
goes,
it's really
yeah, because he
heavy
gets to just
stuff.
go right back to him going up the stairs again.
Yeah, he's going up the stairs
And make
again.
people
He's
feel
like, there's
upstairs.
no mail. He's checking the mail again. There's nothing there, and it's just again, it's just showing the daily grind,
Cycle.
basically. Yeah, the
Yeah.
daily cycle that he's in. It's just how far are we into this film as well? Like, I know this podcast is probably about around the hour mark now, but the film itself
Yeah.
is we're only about 15 minutes in. I would have thought,
Yeah, because there's a lot. It's just this. Every scene is packed with stuff. And that's what they really
Yeah,
do with
there's
this
so
film.
much to So anyway, so he's going. Yeah, he's going. There's no mail, and then he's getting in the lift, and then he holds the lift for his neighbor. He's like younger lady, attractive, has a son as well. They're like a young kid, Um,
Yeah, sort of some sort of like driver vibes from this, you know.
yeah, literally drive. Yeah, exactly. It's like, um, and then yeah, not only is it drive vibes, but you've also got a direct Taxi Driver reference. You've got the gun finger, pulling the trigger to like shoot yourself thing. Obviously in this context, just like done as like a humorous thing, where it's like, oh, the kid's like, yeah, like
Oh yeah,
make
the kids just being
chaos and
annoying,
stuff,
you
and
know.
she's like,
Yeah,
oh, like, um. But obviously, that has like a totally different meaning to Arthur Fleck, who's sat there and he's like, yeah, who's basically suicidal, as it's shown earlier, and that, and he just sees it just totally he interprets that in just a completely different way because of the state of mind that he's in. And then also, yeah, it's this moment where he sees like there's like obviously he's a lonely guy, he's single, etc. And then there's like this young or younger, sort of attractive neighbor that he's got. And it's kind of like quite a dream, almost fantasy scenario, right? And this is where we get to it. So he meets this guy. Anyway, does the gun mime, and obviously as they step out the lift, he goes, "Hey," and then he does it again to her, but like in quite
yeah,
a kind of
over
disturbing
exaggerated.
like way.
Yeah,
But obviously,
yeah. She's like,
again,
oh
it's just
yeah,
showing this, like, how often does Arthur Fleck get the chance to interact with, a potential partner or whatever, girlfriend or whatever, someone that he would like to, and it's just obvious. It's just he's just in this awkward. He can't think of anything to say to her in the lift, and as they're getting out, and then at the last second he just does something because he wants to, again, it's just something like related to young people, all this like lack of social interaction, and then when they get a chance, it's like etc. Um, Anyway,
yeah. But he's immediately back in his apartment, you know,
yeah, he's
like
back. He's washing his mum again. It's just a very uncomfortable scene to watch and there. But he's like, and this is
yeah,
where we get it's referenced earlier, but now it's like really gets into this. She has an obsession with Thomas Wayne, right? Who she's claiming is really well. No, she doesn't say anything. She doesn't let on to. We get on to discover that later. But she's like, oh, she's like really. She loves Thomas Wayne. She's like admiring him. He's
yeah. She
running.
keeps going about him. He's a good man, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Also, she completely cuts him down at this point, like, like because he's like, you know, like, why do you keep going, like, his letters and so on and so forth. There's no mail and so on. But then he's like, you know, oh, you know, I'm going to like a comedy gig and so on, and I've been working material, and then she says to him, like, just straight up, like, oh, don't you have to be funny to be a comedian? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know, like, because you never really see his reaction from it. Like, that surely must have crushed him a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Or
Because
maybe it
that's
wasn't even
like probably
registered.
the one thing he would expect, is for his mum to like support him, whatever, and he just doesn't even get it from there. So this is a guy who's just desperate. Um, and then anyway, so he puts it to bed, and then he starts drinking and playing with the gun, right? That he's just got. Again, this is
Yeah.
definitely like a Taxi Driver moment because he's like saying, he's like, this is the bit he's like, it's effectively like you're talking to me. Scene from Taxi Driver, right? The very famous scene, and
Yeah.
he's like. I think he's also saying something. He's like, "Yeah, I've got a gun. Like,
Yeah,
what's
he's
be a
yeah, he's
cowboy?"
like pretending to yeah, he's pretending to dance. And he's like, oh, you know, oh, what's your name? And he's like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
exactly.
thanks. Oh yeah, you're a pretty good dancer. You know who isn't? Him. And he just shoots. I always found that really funny every time I saw it. I don't know why. It's just like it's another weird ma-
Mm.
unintentional reminder to me, like all the way back from Batman Returns, where like Penguin's roasting them for being bad at dancing. I don't know why.
Yeah, you're right. I
But
didn't pick up on that.
yeah, this is another scene where again you get like this is probably the scene where you most get like the view of like how much weight he's lost and so on and so forth. Like
Yeah, that's
there's
right.
like
His
a literal
shirt.
skeleton
He's doing
weight.
this weird dance. It's. I don't really know what that's. I don't really understand the whole dance thing in this film because he's like, it's obviously something very important to him. And he's always like, he's doing this, and it's a very strange, like, strange dance. But he's like, he does it, and it's obviously a trademark thing for this film. Now, when he's later on dancing down the stairs. But you know, I guess it's like something that is just this like inner like beauty within him that he never gets to express only behind closed doors. He's like, and later on he's like asking his mum to dance with him, but he's got no one to dance with, right? And it's like very, I guess this is like a painful thing for him as well.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, and he accidentally fires the gun, and then he's like, "Oh, yeah, it's just a movie, you know, whatever," for his mum,
Yeah,
etc.
just watching an old war movie puts up the volume to maximum, you know.
Yeah, um, gets away with that one. But and then we see him stalking his neighbor, which is like, you know, that's like, and this is where you begin to go like, "Oh, okay, this is a bit, I don't know," but
Yeah,
still,
yeah, it's like it's yeah. I just it's funny. I wrote because I write like I wrote in my notes like the scene and then what I think about it. It's like outside school. It's as bad as it sounds. Like he's just stood
yeah,
there in the coat hood up, like just. But obviously he's not actually looking at the kid. He's like it's not that much better that he's
of
staring at
course,
a woman like either that he doesn't
true,
know.
true,
Like
yeah, he's stalking his neighbor, you know, and yeah, so then. Anyway, so then we get to see him. Now he's attending a stand-up comedy night, and you know, obviously trying to like draw some inspiration for his own career that he wants to pursue. And it's a funny one, you know, because everyone's laughing at the obviously everyone's laughing at the comedian's jokes, but then he's always laughing at like the wrong bits when everyone else is quiet. Then he starts laughing.
yeah, maybe he's like delayed or something. He's like oh yeah. He's like thinking, oh, everyone's just laughed. I should probably join in, but then yeah, he's maybe too late or something. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a bit of that, but it's also like it's weird because you don't know it's like his laughter because obviously his laughter, as we've seen up until this moment, is like only something that he does because of his condition. But then now he's got like but whereas it's a very normal and like expected place for you to laugh, and then he doesn't really know how to do it. So you know. And anyway, then now this is the element of the film which confused me the first time I watched it, and then when I watched it the other day, I was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. So obviously now he goes and his neighbor I think knocks on his door, and she's like, yeah, were you stalking me earlier? Were you following me? And he's like, yeah. And they have like quite funny, like charming, like romantic conversation. He's like, yeah, you know, I thought you were gonna rob my place. And he's like, well, I can tomorrow. You know, I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah. Because he's the thing is, he's like, yeah, he doesn't even. He probably thinks like she's being serious. Like, oh yeah, I wish you robbed that place, like the bank. I'm assuming she's talking about. And
No,
then he's like,
it was her apartment. She was talking about.
no, I was no, because I don't know. I'm pretty. It's so far. I always understood it as she walks past a bank, as well, like which is kind of near the school, and then she
Oh,
assumes he's in the place. But then like he takes that seriously. Like he's like, oh, I've got a gun. You know, I could drop by tomorrow. Like, but because he thinks like she might actually be serious about it, but then she thinks he's joking, and then it's like a miscommunication because again he's not that bright.
no,
But
I read this scene totally differently. This
maybe
dialogue.
yeah, maybe you're
I
right. Who knows? But
I read this totally differently, and there's a reason for it. But I interpreted this as she was expecting him to rob her apartment because he's stalking her. So like finding out when he's not in the place, and then he makes that reply as like as a charming sort of humor, like a joke. You know, well, you know, I didn't bring my gun. I can tomorrow if you like. And then
yeah,
it's
but
like a
it's like
joke. It
I
like
think
lifts off the tension.
yeah, but when you
And
look at like Phoenix's
the
face
reason
there,
though I read it that way is because the first time I watched this film, obviously there's like the plot twist at the end. It's like, oh, that was all a delusional fantasy, and this time, and that really confused me because I was like, oh shit, what was fantasy? When did it begin? What was fantasy? What wasn't? And now I watch it and I'm like, this is the moment when it begins. This is when he's like, she comes to him, she opens his door, and they start having a nice conversation. This is when it becomes. This is the beginning of his fantastical relationship with her. Everything
yeah,
from this moment with her is fantasy. It's delusion,
yeah. But
right?
there's a bit that happens like briefly before this, like I think it's right after the it's before he goes to stand up, but after he's like stalking her. There's like a particular part where he's on the train, right? He's also still stalking her, but there's like you get this wide shot of like Gotham and it's like cut down the middle by like you see the train going along, but
Yeah,
like Gotham is like enormous, man. It's like superimposing, but
yeah,
it's all
yeah,
like
yeah.
great, like blocks and everything. I think it's like 24 minutes, like 20 seconds, and I like even wrote down a time mark for it for those who have access to the film like at their fingertips, but it's like it's really nuts. Like you just get to see. It's just depressing to look at basically because it's like overbearing almost that shot.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one of those, and I think it just highlights the loneliness that he experiences because it's one of those, you can feel alone in a crowd, right? And obviously, this is a very current thing, and it's depicted in a lot of films. I think, right, yeah, there's so many. I mean, the first one that comes to mind, to be honest, is Blade Runner. But you've just got like a mega metropolis, right? And that's what Gotham is always portrayed as, like you know tens of millions of people, right? And this is just a huge city, and then even though you're surrounded by people, you don't know your own neighbor's name or whatever. It's like it's still so easy to become lonely in a city in a metropolis like that, where it's just everyone becomes faceless, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
and also like yeah, I mean, I think the scene following on as well, not like from this, but from where we were last talking, her like his interaction with this lady at his door.
yeah,
I think the thing that comes right after is like he's in the hospital with the kids, and
that's
he's
right.
like,
Yes. Then we get to the children's
"Oh,
hospital.
gotta say, this scene I remember every time I watched it, especially in cinema, it makes you like it gives you it makes you cringe, but not for like bad reason, like um obviously like like he's like dancing and shit, like make like if you're happy, clap your hands or wiggle your ears and so on or stomp your foot. When he stamps his foot, like the gun like comes out from underneath his his ankle holster or whatever. um and it's seeing that in cinema always made me cringe, um
Yeah, just like
you get that secondhand embarrassment,
yeah, and it's just like at this point, it's like whatever can, it's Murphy's law, whatever can go wrong. Sorry, that's not Murphy's law. Sod's law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and just things go from bad to worse for him. So he gets, yeah, and it's just because you see him at just his highest and his lowest, one after the other. So you just get this double. So he's there, he's like with the kids, he's making them happy. It's like this is what he lives for, effectively. This is like the highlight of his day. His job, and he's able to bring happiness to kids. And it's like this is like I say, the peak of his existence, effectively. Unfortunately, in this stage of his where he's at, where we find him, and then yeah, the gun which was given to him for someone else just falls out of his pocket accidentally, and then the next thing we see, he just gets fired over the phone. He's in a phone box, and it's just absolutely devastating.
yeah, it's
'Cause he
like I
says,
love
he's
this
like, "Oh,
job,
I love this job." I don't. And he tries to lie his way out. He's like, "Oh, it's a prop. It's part of my acting. It's just, And he just gets the guy doesn't care because he's already, he thinks he stole the sign or the sign got lost. So it's like, and it's just this brutal, merciless world where they're just like, well, too bad, you're fired, and he's fired over the phone, no less, as well. It's just really brutal, and he's just there alone in this phone box. He headbutts it. It's like breaks the glass. It's just really, it's a heartbreaking scene. It's just devastating. And for it to happen in a moment where it's like I mean he gets to do different things as a clown obviously, but this is probably his one this is the kind of booking that he looks forward to most. He doesn't holding the sign and stuff. It's probably just like probably not one of the better jobs because he's not really bringing like having the joy to anyone directly. But then in the children's hospital, that's probably like like I say, the best kind of booking he gets. That's the one he looks
yeah,
forward
because
to
he
most.
doesn't, yeah, because especially because the kids won't judge him, will they? Like
Yeah, exactly.
they're
They're
always on
just
board.
happy to see him, and that's so rare for him in his life. And yeah, and then he just gets fired, and he can't do that again. That's taken from him, and partially his fault, but mostly not. I mean, there's this guy who introduces and gives him this gun, and this is why it is. I come back to it from what I said before. It's just interesting how the gun plays this role in his life. It effectively makes him lose his job and lose his happiness, actually, all because of a gun.
Mm.
He doesn't use the gun either. It's not like he shot someone or whatever. Just fell out of his pocket in a kid's hospital in the worst possible situation, and that was enough for him. Probably a nurse grasped on him or whatever, and that was enough to just final nail in the coffin for his boss anyway. Okay, and now we get to where the gun takes him. So having just been fired, he's done, man. He doesn't even bother taking his mask off or his makeup or anything or his costume. He's on the train back home, and he sees this lady being harassed by three guys, three like Wall Street guys, effectively, you know,
Yeah,
in
one of them is
suits.
definitely drunk.
Yeah, they probably all are intoxicated one way or another. And they're harassing this lady on the train, and she looks over at him. She's obviously very uncomfortable. He's there, and he's like, "What does he do?" They make eye contact, and I can't remember
Well,
exactly
I think
what the reaction is, but he's kind of like he's done anyway. He's just been given a massive shit sandwich. You know, he's just like he's feeling absolutely miserable, and probably thinking what he's going to do with his life now. And he just sees this, and there's nothing he can do really. He just starts laughing, I think, right?
yeah, I think he starts yeah, because she moves on to the next carriage.
Walks past him, but she
Because
walks
she's like
past him
she
as he's laughing, right? He's just laughing hysterically because of his condition. He's just in this awkward situation. He's
yeah.
feeling nervous. He probably wants to do something, but he's just like, he's just so down at that moment, more down than usual. He's just, and
Yeah,
obviously
this
outnumbered
is
as well.
again it's probably yeah, because this like when he laughs as well, it leaves him like pretty vulnerable as well, because he's like doubling over, you know. But and
Yeah,
also the fact that this is like a really inconvenient time to, be laughing because the guy who like was like harassing her like thinks that he thinks it's like I don't know,
right.
in his drunk mind he probably thought he was like, about to pull or something. But he's like, "Oh, you think
Yeah,
this is funny, like what are you laughing about?" Because like and they all like go up to him and they're like I don't know. Like at first, they kind of like one of them sits beside him, puts on the
huh.
clown hair and so on. Like I don't know, like half they're kind of joining in or something. But then as he keeps laughing, like because he's like stressed out as hell,
And he's
probably.
trying to find his card as well to show them, right?
Yeah, he's like,
He
"Oh,
can't
what's
get
so
to it in
funny?" He's
time.
like, "I have a condition," and he's like trying to get the car, but then they obviously knock onto the floor and so on.
Well, this is the thing. Just yeah, because he's like in this hysterical laughter, and yeah, I never. Yeah, that guy probably thought. Yeah, I never really thought about that, but yeah, in his drunken state, probably thought, oh yeah, this girl like she's gonna be into me or whatever. He's like, then she walks away, and he blames that on Arthur Fleck for laughing or whatever. Like he's like, maybe he doesn't even blame. He just takes it out on him, right? That rejection. The guy feels like a rejection, so he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take it out on this fucking guy, man. And now there's this very strange. There's a very strange just moment where the guy starts singing, right?
Yeah,
And
I don't understand really. Like,
the only possible explanation I can put to that, because it's so out of place, it doesn't make any sense. But it's the only way I could interpret that is just being a direct homage to A Clockwork Orange, where that's like he's singing in the rain and they beat up the homeless
yeah,
guy.
maybe.
And I think it was very much. That's the only thing I can put it down to. It's just because it's effectively the same thing happens. They just start kicking the shit out of him, and it's again just what happens. It's basically a repeat of what happens at the very beginning of the film, except this time he's got a gun on him and he shoots one of them dead, and he shoots the other second one of them, and then the third guy runs off, but he gets a stray in the leg, right? And and then yeah, they're
Yeah, it's a miracle no one hears this or like,
well, there's no
sees
one
it.
on the train, So I mean,
It is
firstly,
quite late.
there's no one on the train. This is obviously happening late at night. But then there's the other thing where it's like, well, in the state of this society in this city that's being portrayed here, gunshots probably quite commonplace, and no one's going to do anything anyway. It's like, well, whatever, I'd be better off just keeping out of this.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point as well.
but regardless, there's no one there. Obviously, it's like late at night. It's like a band, whatever. So.
Yeah.
And then anyway, the guy's trying to get off. There's like this moment where they're gonna get off the train or not get off the train, and then they both do, and Joker shoots him down, and he actually empties his gun
Mm.
into the guy.
Yeah, there's a good
Trying to
point
get
as
away.
well in this. I mean, I assume he reloads as well, like, given there's probably only 6 shots in that. But he
No, there's 8. I counted.
oh nice. But yeah, he definitely probably had time to do a bit of reloading. But anyway, he
Yeah, maybe did.
yeah, something that they actually reconcile with this, which is a good point, is that when he like shoots him like 3 times like rapid succession when he empties the gun. But the fact that he's like his ears are ringing and shit, because like
Mhm.
in most films, like like you
Yeah,
fire a billion guns and like it is completely fine. But for those who have actually fired guns, like it's extremely loud, especially a revolver that's like got that
yeah,
big
yeah,
barrel.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like he's like, I'm surprised he doesn't actually go like temporarily deaf from that. But
Well, he does
um,
that. This
essentially
I
speaking,
think
yeah,
apparently the sound of that sound of like when your ears are ringing. That's actually the sound of your I'm going to get this wrong. Something
It's like the
something to do with your
eardrum or
hearing.
whatever
Your
it's
ear
called.
cells or something
Eardrum.
dying, basically. Your
Huh.
the things that can make you hear something to do with your eardrum or something. That's the sound of your hearing cells dying, basically. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, and yeah, you're right, and yeah, it's very rare you actually hear that in a film, like, and that's Oscar nomination for sound editing. That would have been part of it,
Yeah, it's
although
one of those things.
it's a bit
Yeah,
inconsistent though, because obviously that ringing sound would last for a lot longer, and also he doesn't hear it when he accidentally misfires in his apartment. So I don't know, very little
yeah,
just thing. I mean, but yeah.
yeah, true. But
So
there's a
anyway,
thing, yeah, there's a thing as well that I like in
yeah,
this that they made a point of when making this film is that they wanted to, even though there aren't that many deaths in this film, compared to like, any other ones you could probably think of.
I think the body count is
They,
6 in this film, 6 or 7.
yeah, maybe, I think, yeah, perhaps. But I think it might be five, or maybe I'm missing one.
I think it's
But
6 because
they,
yeah. Go on.
yeah, they just decide to the violence in this is a lot more like real, kind of. It feels like it's really gruesome, kind of, um, and it just happens in like a split second. And another good thing I feel about this film that they managed to pull off is the fact that, like, unlike, like in a Batman film, for example, like when you go into a lot of films, you can already know a few things. Like, for example, in Batman, you pretty much guaranteed Batman's not going to die or something, unless it's like the end of The Dark Knight Rises, in which maybe he didn't, but then you find out autopilot, so on. But in this, like, really basically anything can happen. And I remember watching it in cinema, like it really, like, for the first time, it really felt like you really didn't know where I was going to go next.
Mhm.
Um, and like this like killing that happens like so suddenly, like you're kind of
Mhm.
taken off guard by it, which is a big strength of this film, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a guy who's just. Although it's funny because I want to say that he's hit rock bottom because he's just been fired, but it gets even worse for him as you go on, right? So I don't know if this is his rock bottom. Probably is up until this moment, and then it gets even worse for him. But this is a moment where he will have felt like he's hit rock bottom, right? And then yeah, he just snaps and he's like he decides I'm not going to take this anymore, and he kills these three young men, and obviously this is this whole film is like how someone could end up becoming the Joker, but I think it kind of shows as well like how not just how one man how the Joker could come to pass, but how anyone could become the Joker. Because up until this point, you're effectively this is something that anyone is capable of, right? This is why gun laws are so highly debated and stuff. Why because if it ends up in the wrong hands of someone who desperate school shootings, etc., etc. So this is just a desperate guy who, but then he's picked on by these three guys, and obviously this goes on to expose another huge problem, in my opinion, possibly the biggest problem in today's society, especially in England, where we're from, obviously, which is the class divide. Right, in other countries, in other society, Western American perhaps, you have like very big issues like racism. In other countries, it'll be sexism, whatever. And obviously, those societal like problems exist in England as well, of course. But I think in
The
my
greatest
opinion,
one being
and I don't want
class,
to get
yeah.
too political, but like in my opinion, I think the one of the biggest issue or the biggest issue in society in England is the class divide, and this is and it's that's the case all over the world, to be fair. But I think that's something I think is particularly apparent in the UK, and this is where you begin to see that exposed within this world as well. Again, it touches it, and we'll get into that into more detail, but. Anyway, so then we get he shoots these guys and then escapes
He
into like
just
a
runs
public
home.
bathroom,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. He does a little
And
dance.
he just he starts dancing, right? And it's like
Yeah, with this music going in the background, this violin, viola, something.
yeah, and obviously like it, and again it's just this unexpected reaction to like what you've just done, and then it's like and he's almost like found peace at this moment, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I want to say, like, I was trying to write something where I could say, like, there's no real way to describe the scene. This is the thing. Like, it's kind of it's like something you can't. It's like a scene. There's probably a reason why there's no dialogue in this like short bit, because it can't really. There's nothing you can really explain in words what they do here. Like,
Yeah.
um, I assume it's just, to me. I just assume it's the point where he snaps, kind of, because he just murdered
Yeah,
like three
I think
people.
so. I think so. And you know, up until this point, I would say, with the exception of the stalking, although with social media, I suppose that can manifest itself in not such a explicit way. It doesn't have to be physical stalking, right? But I would say up until this point, Joe Arthur Fleck is going through some things which are fairly reasonable. You know, what you've seen so far is like, yeah, that's something I can relate to. You know,
Yeah,
um,
I can't
but
really
then
relate to
obviously,
murder.
yes,
Yeah.
minus the stalking. But then, yeah, then he starts shooting people, and that's where you draw the line. Okay, now he's a criminal, right? He's taken 3 lives, and it's like, okay, so then it's like just a reminder that you can't go out and do this. This is what it will lead to if if the wrong things. But again, this is it's portraying what can happen to someone who just becomes desperate and just who just loses, who's at rock bottom basically, and a broken man, broken by society, right? And this is showing how that can manifest itself. So he's doing, and anyway, so he's dancing, and but he reacts to this very like in, I guess, like a psychotic way, right? Because he starts dancing, and then the very next thing he does, he goes back to his apartment building, knocks on his neighbor's door, and then just kisses her. And I assume that they, within this, obviously this is fantasy now. This is why it's difficult to delineate, between what's real and what isn't. But as
Yeah,
far
but when
as
he comes to this point, it's quite obvious, to be fair.
yeah, true, true. But still, I mean, when I first watched the film, I kind of took it at face value, and the second time I was like, it was very clear to me what was. And then yeah, it's just like
Yeah,
this
true.
is
I
something in
did
the
take it
fantasy.
at face value as well first time. I was like, what?
Yeah, yeah. And you think, wow, that's I don't know. But yeah, that's so then he does that anyway, and then the next day he goes to work. Well, back to work to like effectively clear his desk, and yeah, the clowns and stuff, and
Oh yeah, like,
and
oh yeah, why the fuck? Yeah, they're like, why the fuck would you bring a gun? And he's like, I don't know, ask Randall, And then
yeah,
he's like, the guy gave him the gun, and this guy's like, oh, what are you talking about? Or something. I didn't do anything. He's like, oh, I still owe you for that one, don't I? And then he's obviously trying to deny it. But I remember this is quite funny to me when he's like,
good
oh,
line.
stop talking out your ass, Randall. He's like honking a horn at him, like he's, well, I mean, he's literally a clown. It's his job. But this is again saying that he does right afterwards. I assume is meant to be kind of like appealing to, or intentionally trying to relate to people who like hate their jobs, for example, or right after they got fired. Like he's like,
Yeah,
oh, I forgot to punch, and he like punches the shit out of the machine until it falls
yeah.
off.
That I
Assuming
think
like
that must have got a cheer in the cinema, man. I know for me, it's like, yeah, you have the clock in, clock out thing. You're just like, yeah, fuck this shit, man.
yeah, so
uh,
probably so many people want to do that, but then
oh
they got to.
yeah, man. Oh, I know I've been there. um, but anyway, so then and then as he's walking out, there's the sign above the door which says "Don't forget to smile," and he crosses out the "forget to," so don't smile. I think that was a little bit on the nose, but I think it can be excused at this point.
I don't know. I thought it was a good part of the film.
And then anyway, he goes home and he's watching TV with his mum, and they're reporting on this incident, the killing from the night before, the 3 guys who got killed.
It's because they have societal clout. They're rich, they get to be on their deaths are on TV,
Yeah,
like if everyone
and
cares basically.
yeah, and you got Thomas Wayne there because obviously he's running for president. Sorry, for mayor.
For mayor, yeah, if he's running for president, yeah.
Yeah, he's running for mayor, and he goes, yeah. And you know what I picked up here, because he's talking about, oh, yeah, these people, they put on a mask, they put, and they're like trying to hide who they are because they're cowards, blah, blah, blah. The clowns. But up until he said the word clown, I think that was like almost foreshadowing Batman. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Because he's
Yeah,
like,
it's one of the things that I realized in this is like, because there is a later, like briefly later, there's a bit where they're looking at like someone's reading, like there's several people reading newspapers, and it says like they describe the person who killed these lot as a vigilante, which is obviously why they, or vigilante. Like there's
I was
also what
going
they
to say,
describe
that's such a
Batman as.
posh pronunciation, man.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know why I did. But anyway, yeah, it's like the inner Brit coming out. But they decided, yeah, it's like calling him vigilante is like, what people describe Batman as well.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, there are a couple of strange, really weird parallels between this Joker and Batman for some reason. And one thing I did notice as well, I don't know if you picked up on this, but this is obviously my third viewing. When Wayne is talking, he's like, these three like guys you work for me. I never personally met them, but like we're like family. And then his mum's like, his mom's like, you hear that? You hear what he said? He said we're family because, like, I didn't realize this, but it makes more sense having later on seen the film. If she thinks that he's actually, the real father of Arthur Fleck, but
Mhm.
it's just a delusion. But she's delusional to the point where she's not actually hearing what he's saying. She's imagining that he's saying, like, talking directly to her through the TV.
Yeah.
Um, I never noticed that until this point, but
Yeah.
I thought that's quite interesting.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I just think I was thinking about it now. It's just the fact that it's like, what would Thomas Wayne have said about Batman? This is the thought that I've just come that's come to me now. It's like, what would Thomas Wayne have? Thomas Wayne would have condemned Batman. Like his own son, without obviously knowing there's his son, and obviously Batman would never happen if Thomas Wayne doesn't get killed. But it's just fascinating to me. Like, would have probably just got the same, and he does, right, in Batman films when Batman's like doing his thing. He's getting condemned by a lot of high society people. So I think that's quite interesting as well.
Yeah, and there's
But
a
anyway,
there's a thing I want to touch on with
oh yeah,
Thomas Wayne. But first of all, they originally planning to have Alec Baldwin play him, but the fact
wow,
that he ended up dropping out, because he had scheduling conflicts. But the
mm,
fact I found it interesting that they decided to get Brett Cullen to play him as well because he had actually played someone in the Dark Knight Rises. He was
yeah,
like a kind of a minor role. He was that
congressman,
I think I mentioned this in the episode. He plays that senator, I think, or he's just some semi-important political figure that Catwoman kind of like brings along
yeah,
and robs, basically.
yeah, that's right,
But I found it like weird when I saw him in that, and I was like, hang on a minute, he's that
yeah,
guy
yeah.
from Joker. But I just thought
I,
that's quite interesting.
I think they could have. I mean, the thing is, the whole Wayne Batman things. That's very much a side piece in this film, right? But and I think perhaps it was deliberate. They didn't cast such a well-known actor for that role. But I think maybe if they had done like a more recognizable face or one, for example, if they had, I don't know, Michael Keaton or Adam West or something like, I mean, something like that, then yeah, it would have been like probably too distracting. So probably the reason why they went down there. Although it would have been interesting to see, like, I don't know. But anyway, so certainly he basically the point of his speech, as far as Arthur Fleck's concerned, is he labels these guys as clowns. That's like big emphasis
Yeah,
on that,
big
right?
mistake by him. It was like
Yeah,
it was a terrible choice of words, honestly.
yeah. Um, So then we get to see Joker go back to his therapist or counseling, and he's like really opening up. We see him; he's like really like pouring his heart and soul out at this moment. He's like really telling her how he feels, like what he's going through. Obviously, she's completely oblivious to the fact that he's the guy that killed these three people in the train. But you know, but it's revealed that she doesn't care. He's like she starts talking about something completely different, and then he just goes and he's just like, "You've never listened to me ever." This is like, this is
Yeah,
a
it's ironic as
disregarding.
well
It's
because
like
like
this is
yeah, it's ironic because he said he was just saying which she ignored as well, like the fact that for the
pointless.
longest time he didn't think he even existed because like no one ever listened to him, but now people are starting to notice, and then she's just not ignoring him. And he's like, I said, used to think I didn't even exist for a time, and then she's like, okay,
Yeah,
she's like,
it's
oh, by
just
the way, I'm
it
closing
just
down.
again it just re-emphasizes like how alone and desperate he is. The one person that is supposed to act as some kind of like in a professional capacity is supposed to act as some kind of you know counseling for him, or at least someone that will listen to him. She doesn't give it. She doesn't give a shit either. And again, this is another character who's obviously that counselor. She's that therapist. She's troubled herself. She's obviously not happy with her life or her job either. And she's like, she's
Yeah, she's probably just
effectively,
lost it as well.
yeah. And then it turns out she's lost her job as well. She's like, yeah, well, these aren't happening anymore anyway. They've cut our funding. and like and she's like, we're effectively in the same boat, you know. She's just been forgotten about as well. She's a victim as well of society, and it's like, again, you know, you just get a double whammy there, because it's like, not only does he realize, you know, he's like, the therapist isn't listening to me, but then she's not going to
He
be there
can't
at
get his
all.
medication.
But the first thing he thinks is not like, oh, he doesn't feel sorry for her, and perhaps he doesn't have to, because effectively that's how he feels as well. But he's just panicking because he's like, where am I going to get my medications from? Where am I going to get my pills, my tablets? You know, so again, he's lost his job, and now he's lost his medication, and to a lesser extent, probably of less importance to him, but maybe I'm wrong, but he's also lost his an ear, you know, someone to listen to him, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not she listens. I mean, the thing about people listening, right? I mean, and again, just to briefly touch this whole mental health thing, I think it's important to say, you know, like, with people listening, I think a lot of people, you don't even need to have someone that listens. You know, you just need someone there so you can get things off your chest, say them, speak them into existence. Almost, they're not in your head anymore, or not. You know, you're not dwelling on them. And then when you speak them into existence, or even writing them down, I think to a lesser extent, but at least so you've shared that with someone, and then it can help you feel better. You know, I think, and
Yeah,
that's,
like
at
lessons
least it
of
had
kind of
that kind
mental
of
health.
value. All right, she wasn't listening to him, which she should have. You know, that's her job, right? But then, at least, I don't know. He doesn't even have that. He doesn't even have someone that's pretending to do their job, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, it's just it is a quite brief scene, but again, it's like just
Yeah,
hard, like landing, just heaping more and more on top of him, like just to like be like, say, feel bad for this guy, you know?
yeah. And then we see him at the. He's because he's lost his job. He's lost a lot of things now. So now he's gonna like go and
Yeah,
full on pursue this.
pursue his comedy.
Yeah, as a comedian, and we see him, you know, presumably at his first gig,
Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah, he's waiting as well. But I gotta say, the jokes that the guy before him is pulling, they're pretty funny actually, even if they are like, not exactly the most tasteful,
what
talk
were they?
about
I
like,
can't remember. I can't remember. What
he was
was it
like
he was saying?
saying, well,
I remember.
women look at like women look at sex like parking a car, like oh, is it, oh no, women look at sex like buying a car, like, oh, is it safe for me? Is it like, you know, yeah,
Yeah, reliable, whatever. Yeah.
how can I see, how can I see in this long term, and then he's like, well, men look at sex like parking a car. Oh, there's a spot. Oh, I have to pay. Never mind. Handicaps. I hope nobody sees
Oh,
this.
I don't know. I either missed that or I don't know. I didn't really. Yeah. Okay.
I
Um.
remember that got. I remember some of those got like a couple of giggles in the audience.
Oh yeah.
Actual like screening, but yeah.
Now
This is
this is
again.
something that pissed me off, right? Because I didn't see the film when it came out. Everyone else did, and that became a huge meme. Arthur at the microphone, right? And you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
When he's like delivering a failed joke, and it's like, and he's at the microphone, he's like got his book in front of him, and he's like that, like, and that became like a
yeah, yeah.
huge meme, and I didn't have a clue where it was from or what it meant. I just, because I hadn't seen the film, I was like, and then I watched the film like 2-3 years later, and I was like, oh, that's where it's from. Now I
That's where
understand.
it's from.
Oh,
Yeah,
I completely missed out on that one. But
yeah. I mean, yeah. When he actually, yeah, it is the thing because like he goes right up afterwards.
mhm.
Um, and this is another point where, especially when I watched it in the cinema, like it really gives me like it gave me that sort of like that is, I want to call it good cringe, kind of like you feel that secondhand embarrassment for him,
Yeah,
where he's laughing at the stand but he can't control it. Like the audience knows it, but obviously the audience there, they don't. So he just looks like he's just like a moron who's just popped up like to them, and they just like they all want him off the stage basically. Um, but
yeah,
yeah,
right.
like and
It's
he's
just
like
it's like a tragic moment for him, because this is kind of his only hope now, pursuing this kind of career, and you don't get to see the entire show or what happens to him. Does he get booed off or whatever? You just see him kind of deliver these jokes, and like it's not going well, right? um but anyway, he's fantasizing that his neighbor is there, right, who's like
yeah,
supposedly in a
and that
relationship.
goes really well.
Yeah, so he's like, at least he has her there, right? And that's kind of like, probably that's what he's focused on, and And it's so tragic because it's all in his head, right? But that's all he's got. He's like he has to now. He's like his only hope is like stuff that isn't even real. So he's like he's just um like this. Anyway, so they're walking through afterwards, and he's like happy with himself because at least she's like kind of with him and stuff.
Because they've walked past like
Yeah,
I think it might be a newspaper or a poster or something like killer clowns around or something.
yeah,
And she's like, well, I think that guy was a hero. Like, obviously,
yeah,
self affirmation there in his head.
yeah,
It's felt like pretty good if you imagine that was real. And so on. Like, I don't know. It's like the
yeah.
guy's like a hero, so on and so
Well,
forth.
she says like, oh,
But
there's three less pricks in Gotham City now.
yeah, only a million more to go, which is a
Yeah.
bit disturbing. If that's a thought coming from him, then
Well, for sure. But what I like about the scene, it really exposes, like I said before, the class divide in Gotham. How the elites and well, all the rich and the versus the poor, basically, and how disconnected they are, right? And how evident that is in today's society as well. And just the divide there, and it's like almost like well, they don't care about us, they don't treat they like treat us like trash. He's the cut funding for his for the one kind of outlet he does get in terms of some kind of support, so they're just left to rot basically, and so they end up just viewing the elites with the same contempt. It's like, well, they don't care about us, why should we care about them? And like, and it's just this vicious cycle that like
yeah,
it's very, like I said, very current.
yeah, and you can start seeing as well in the scene like that's happening in his head, like sort of like you get these kind of build up of like protests of people who are
Hmm.
like protesting against
Yeah, yeah,
Thomas
like a
Wayne
movement has
for
begun.
calling them all clowns, like like calling like swathes of Gotham's poor, like he's like kind of like because I think one of the reasons why they actually cast Brett Cullen to be Thomas Wayne is he's able to kind of portray him as kind of a cunt, like
Yeah,
he's like
yeah, yeah.
really
That's true. That's true.
like he's like I don't know what it is. I don't want to like insult Brett Cullen, but he's kind of got a face that you can hate,
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
Yeah.
like he's like almost got like a permanent sneer on. Um, and like you can understand why like all the loads of Gothamites, they're just like queuing up to like protest him and say they hate him and so on.
Hmm.
And then you kind of see like that build up in this, and you see like someone wearing like a clown mask go by in a taxi, and like Joker sees him and they like smile at each other and so on, which is
So
I don't know, mix of what's in his head and maybe what's real.
yeah, I wanted to ask, do you think, because obviously that goes on later on in the film, there's like all these clown, this clown movement, right? For want of a better expression.
Hmm.
And do you think that was fantasy, or do you think that was real?
The movement is probably actually that's a good question.
Because
Yeah, because I thought to myself at the end,
by the end of the film, my opinion is that the only real like delusional fantasy was with his neighbor, that relationship he has with his neighbor. But do you think the clown thing was as well? I don't think it was, because obviously he sees it on
no,
TV
because
and like
obviously
Thomas Wayne and
Bruce
all.
Wayne's parents gets killed because of it.
Yeah, and then like Thomas Wayne, it's actually Thomas Wayne who starts that movement, not really Arthur Fleck. He goes like, yeah, well, these people are clowns, and it's like, well, maybe I am a clown then, like puts on a mask, like, yeah, fuck, and then that's how the movement starts. And it's funny, because
Yeah,
obviously in the Batman that kind of starts happening as well with the Riddler, right? So it's like a little bit, I don't know, inspired that, I guess. I don't know.
yeah.
But anyway, so then, oh, okay,
Oh
so
yeah,
then,
he pops back in
yeah,
his apartment, I think.
that's right. So he goes back home, and his mum asks him to post this letter to Bruce Wayne. And obviously, this has been going on for a long time. And Arthur Fleck
Bruce
decides,
Wayne
you
back
know
in
what?
life.
I don't care. I'm going to read one of these letters now. And I mean, it's to say it breaks his world is because he's already been through the mills, right? And now he finds out Thomas Wayne is potentially his father or whatever. He's like been fed lies from before, like about his dad or whatever he was led to believe up until that moment. But he reads this letter that his mum's writing to Thomas Wayne, and he's like, he's fighting with her. He's like they're shouting at
Yeah,
each
she
other.
locks herself in a room.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
mean she's
this,
like, yeah, I won't. She's like, I won't pop out so you're like, you're not angry anymore. And then he's like, he's like, oh, he's like takes like a spin around. He's like, I'm not angry. I'm not angry anymore. And
yep.
yeah, she's like, oh, it's like she's like, oh, like we couldn't like be publicly seen together, like you know what people would say, and then like Phoenix is like like he's really scary at this point where he's like, what would they say, Mum? Like he's like right up against the door and he's like fucking ready to explode again, like which I think this particular scene I think is like a real highlight of his acting in this.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And this moment like begins a new obsession for him. So now he starts, wanting to go and confront Thomas Wayne, or at least
Yeah,
discover the
like
truth, right?
yeah,
Um,
because like even like right the thing that happens directly afterwards, like he's on the train, he's like cuts out a picture from the newspaper of him and like keeps it in his pocket.
mhm. And then he goes to Wayne Manor, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's like right on the way.
So he goes to Wayne Manor, I suppose, in like an attempt to try and find out where he's from, whatever. And he meets young Bruce Wayne, and
Yeah, which yeah, it's
oh
another thing
man,
that I was like, what?
I forgot this happened. I don't remember. This didn't really register in the first time I watched the film. I forgot about it, but this time I was like, wow, like when he goes down the little pole, like the bat pole.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was like,
Oh, I
oh,
was like, whoa, that's amazing, man. That was like, that really got me, man. They like, brilliant,
tiny little reference
brilliant
there.
nod to Adam West series, of course. Like, I absolutely that really like pushed my button, man. And
It's like that. Yeah, that was perfect for you. Like they did that with you in mind or something.
oh yeah, for sure, man. I hope
Adam
that's a
West.
little cheer in the audience at that moment. I guess maybe not, but
To be fair, it probably didn't I don't remember like anyone noticing that. It must have been like something
it's
that flew over their
fantastic
heads.
just a little,
It flew
very
over
subtle
their heads,
nod there. I
yeah.
love it. But anyway, so he goes to the gates and he's like, again, he's like, he sees this young child and he's like trying to like make him laugh or like impress him, like some his wand. He's got like a clown wand, like a prop.
Yeah,
And
because again, he's like acting a bit like a kid. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
let's make him laugh, and he's like thinking of what would make a kid laugh, and he's probably thinking of what would make him laugh as well. Not
mhm,
too far different. And
right.
something I noticed as well, they're both wearing pretty similar looking outfits in this, like especially colors wise.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's something I noticed only at this time for some reason. But they, because it's almost certain that they're not actually related at all. But I
Well, of
guess this
course
is
not.
trying to imply that.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I never noticed that. Yeah, maybe right. I don't know. This is the thing. This is the disadvantage of casting like. I mean, another. I love Joaquin Phoenix, as an actor and as a human being as well. But this is the problem with like he's significantly older than whatever
Yeah,
how old
exactly.
this Bruce. He's like, and it's like it just brings you. No, they're not. They're not. These guys are supposed to be brothers. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just like
you
some
know,
Spectre shit coming up.
they're like 30 years apart, something like that. At least.
Yeah, it's like
So
that makes like the difference between like Jack Nicholson's Joker and Michael Keaton's Batman. It makes that look believable.
yeah, and I wonder if that was perhaps even intentional, just to show that how deluded his mum or whatever must be, because for him to go, oh yeah, you're that he's your father, and then you see this kid that's like, young enough to be your son for sure. Um, maybe that's just an instant. I don't really know how intentional that was, but I don't know. And then and then he puts his fingers in Bruce Wayne's mouth. Like, what did you make of that?
Well, he's like trying to make him smile, I guess.
Yeah,
Because like for all these magic tricks and stuff, Bruce Wayne's like basically like it's like there's nothing behind that face. Like he's just like okay.
yeah, he's
I don't
unimpressed,
know.
right?
I find it weird. I mean, I don't know if he was told to the kid, don't talk to strangers or something, but the fact that there's no like reaction from the kid is a bit weird to me.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, this stranger could put fingers in my. Yeah, it is very strange, but again, it's trying to illustrate the class divide as well. I think a little bit, because it's just like this kid. He's got such a great life. He's in this mansion. He's protected. He's like, um, he's living the dream effectively, especially like the Arthur Flecks of Gotham. The poorer people, the people who've been cast aside, and Bruce Wayne's just there, like so oblivious to what's going on. The real life and stuff. So and it's that childlike innocence that Arthur Fleck's obviously like, and he's never had, and he's like looking for, etc. And yeah, he's. I still think it's strange, but obviously what he's doing there is what he did I think at the very, very beginning of the film. The first thing there, he puts the makeup on and he does that to himself, right, forcing himself to smile. Why he's trying to do that to Bruce Wayne is obviously representing something about. Anyway, as he's doing so, Alfred comes along and he's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is going on here, and
Yeah, it's like, should I call the police or something?
yeah, and they have a bit of a confrontation there where he's like, yeah, well, I'm Penny Fleck's son, I want to speak to Thomas Wayne. He's like, oh yeah, she's nuts, like,
Yeah,
fuck
it's
off.
like, oh, I know about them too, and he's like, there's nothing to know. He's
Yeah.
being a bit shady about it though, like, which
Hundred
is
percent, 100%.
yeah, it's
Alfred's like
it's
dodgy
because
bastard, man.
yeah, because they're trying to like yeah, because it's one of those things that by this point they're still trying to make ambiguous, because but especially the
Yes.
fact that he's being really sort of like tiptoeing around it is like kind of makes you question yourself and like question whether or not maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But by the end of it, obviously, it's like
And
certain it's not.
yeah, it's kind of hard to figure out because of the age differences, the relative age differences in this film. Like, but perhaps Alfred and Penny were colleagues. You know, perhaps. But perhaps Alfred knows her very well. Perhaps they were working together because what Penny's claiming is that she was in Thomas Wayne's service, which might have been true. And then she throws an allegation at him, whatever, and then there's a big cover up, big hush up, and Alfred might very well, maybe Alfred was a witness or something like that. Maybe someone that it's just interesting what that could protect. But then again, Alfred and Arthur Fleck appear to be about the same age, so it's questionable that perhaps
Yeah, exactly.
his mum, if she ever was in Thomas Wayne's service, and that Thomas Wayne, that she and Alfred were colleagues. Maybe not. Maybe the age difference wouldn't be too great. I don't know, but something that I picked up on there. But
Just
anyway,
nice.
Arthur Fleck goes back home, and he sees his mum being taken out to hospital into an ambulance on a stretcher, and it's like, and then it's just like bang, you think things can't get worse for him, and then he sees this. While he's asking himself all these questions and like what who he is or what's happening. And yeah, his mum is being taken off in a stretcher into hospital. And it's like this just, and then he's in the hospital in the ambulance with her, and it's like very painful, very stressful situation. It's just like, oh, you're just feeling for this guy again, like oh, it just keeps getting worse for him.
Yeah, and the thing
And
that happens right afterwards is like
yeah,
he's like sitting outside the hospital. These two bloody detectives pop up, like remind me somewhat of the two from Hot Fuzz for some reason. I don't know why. Like it's like the pop up at the worst time for this guy, and they're
yeah,
like, "Oh, well, we just got some questions. Like you heard about the murders," and he's probably thinking like, "Fuck," but then
yeah. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
like like I would have been at that point, like, yeah, I did kill them, but can you at least let me, like, fucking, be here for my mum, so on and so forth.
Mm.
But like, yeah, it's like what, yeah, talk about worst timing ever for these guys, because like Fleck is just fucking done with them by this point.
But again, and I think it's like a very subtle, like just society's indifference to people's problems. This guy's literally his mum has just been rushed into hospital, and he's there having a fag, trying to calm down, whatever. And well, they don't give a monkeys. They're just going up to him like, oh yeah, by the way, X Y Z. It's just like this admin stuff. Just
Yeah, I mean, he
there's no
can't.
sensitivity there at all, and there's no like respite from it at all. It's just people trying to get on with it. It's just yeah, really
Yeah,
really.
and then yeah, and the first thing he does after he can't even walk away like without like because he walks right into the exit door, like which always it caught me off guard all three times because it's hard to notice that
Yeah,
it's actually shut. Like he
and
walks
because
right
it
into it,
follows
but as
up
he's
from
like,
like it follows up from like, well, we'll go on to nominate the most Sigma moment in the film, but probably my nomination is when he goes, they say something to him and he goes, oh, what do you think? And it's like, and he flicks the cigarette away, like, oh yeah, there's like, then you got the music playing, whatever, but then he's like, bang, that little moment that he has, that little
yeah,
triumph,
he
he
tries to
just
have a little moment
instantly
and
took away from him. He just walks into the door.
he crashes right into the door. Like, yeah, I've had some moments with clear doors and doors that weren't actually there and I fell through them. But anyway,
Oh, really?
So
Well, they say
that was
that's,
hilarious.
and I think it's the sort of thing they say that's a sign of madness or something like that. But
Oh, that's good to know. No,
yeah.
but like not like there was a time where there was a. I mean, you know this from the school we went to. Like there are like some double doors which are like wooden, but like they were like outlines of wooden doors, and then they're like in the middle there's like a big glass pane. Um, and I walked through like like every other day. This was like afterwards. Thankfully, there was like no one around to see this except like one guy. And and like I like put my arm on the door to like open it. And the next thing I knew, like a second later, I was on the floor because there actually wasn't any glass in there. I was like,
Oh,
what the fuck?
no way.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was like, I fell through that door so fast I had no time to register it. But
oh,
yeah, that's what it reminded me of when I saw
oh,
this, and
that's like
I
the
was like,
reverse situation. There is no door there when you feel there was. That's funny.
yeah, it's like
I
feels
think
bad.
I
Yeah,
might have walked into a glass door once in my life, but I'm not sure because that's where I heard about the sign of madness or something like that. I was like, oh, okay.
sign of madness. It's a plain. It's like you can't see it.
Well,
Like basically,
well, yeah, but I don't know. So anyway,
sign of not paying attention. Anyway,
okay, so then he's with his mom. He's like, looking over her, and then he sees himself, and then again he just gets another, kick to the gut. Where he sees he sees himself on TV, which is like elation for him at first, and then you realize he's
yeah, it's
being
like I'm on the Murray
mocked by his
Franklin
hero.
show.
Yeah, and then he's being mocked by his hero, and it's just like, and you can see on
Yeah,
his face, I think that's fantastic acting, just the
yeah,
emotion.
like Murray makes like he's literally making fun of the mentally ill for like his own gain.
And yeah, Arthur Fleck's reaction is amazing. He just goes from like loving this guy to hating him, and just that transformation you see on his face is Oscar worthy. That's
Yeah, it's
exactly what
yeah, that little bit as well turned into a meme as well. Put anything on the TV as his reaction.
got.
Um, and also something I wanted to point out as well. I think like it's another thing that he imagines as well that his neighbor's with him, and she's like, "Oh,
Oh
I
yeah.
always been wondering like, how's she gonna exit this?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee. Do you want some?" And he's like, just shakes his head, and then she leaves, and then
Mhm.
wasn't there the whole time. Most probably.
Yep.
But then yeah, that must be.
Oh yeah, can you imagine?
So
Um,
they've heaped so much stuff on him, like he's lost his job, like now his mum's in hospital. Now, like he like the one person left,
yeah,
Murray is like making fun of him now, like
yeah.
for
Lost his
like
meds. Well, yeah, he's just lost everything
essentially
at this
millions
point,
of
pretty much.
people are seeing this, or hundreds of thousands at least.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, anyway, so that happens, and then yeah, and then he decides he's gonna go and confront Thomas Wayne, right? One way or another. He can't do it through visiting his house properly, so he has to like find his own way there. So he goes
Yeah,
up to. I think there's some kind of yeah, there's some kind of political
protest going on.
event that he's going to appear at, and
Yeah,
this is where he sees like the clown movement protest have really like ramped up because now there's like legions of them outside this building, presumably like the government a government building in Gotham, and or is it, sorry, it's an opera, isn't it?
it's outside of it's kind of a theater sort of area because
Yeah, some opera slash
yeah,
theatre.
he's like
Right,
it's
right.
some patronage or something that Thomas Wayne is doing. I don't know. The one
Yeah,
thing I do
and
have to
it's
give
obviously very much like opera's like I think a real symbol of like the
higher
super rich,
class.
yeah, like ultra rich. They like that's what they
Well,
do.
it's yeah.
They don't go to the football,
They
unless they're buying
yeah,
the club. They go and
yeah,
like
exactly.
and
They
watch.
yeah, they make a good point actually. Well, not a point, but they one thing I noticed is with the protests that they have here. It's probably you sometimes see them in like previous DC films, like Batman v Superman, and
Mhm.
um, and I think this is probably the best representation of a protest like that we've seen. Kind of, this is like a kind of maybe a strange thing to talk about, but the fact that or like this is poor against the rich, and they've all got their signs are really good, like saying like stuff like guess yeah, like we're all clowns and so on and so
Mhm.
forth, or like one's taking the mick out of him, kill the rich is as extreme as it sounds, you see that actually quite frequently, or
Yeah, you
eat the
see that
rich.
all the time. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think this is probably the best process sort of you see.
Or like most
Especially
realistic.
it erupts later on. It's just how it is.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Very
Someone saying
realistic,
that's
and
fine.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's just exposing that class divide, and like, and it doesn't begin from the poor loathing the rich. It starts from like the rich. It's a reaction from the poor of the loathing they receive from the rich, which, Thomas Wayne makes very public earlier in the film. He condemns the. It's like, oh, the poor people, they I mean, I'm saying poor and rich, it's like I'm just using very general terms here, but the he's like, yeah, those rich guys, they were like, my buddies, they were like, yeah, they had a great life for them, da, da, da. And the poor's like, well, we don't really care, what they ever done for us, what they ever going to do for us, nothing, there's, whatever. And it's just this divide of like, they've been downtrodden, forgotten about, and then their response to that is just to hate on the people that they feel have inflicted that on them, and it's a theme that very much continues into the Batman as well. So
Yeah,
very interesting
I
stuff there.
mean, this is an interesting thing as well because they obviously, this process happens, and Fleck is able to like sort of weave his way through the crowd in order
Yeah.
to sneak into this event.
Mhm.
And I don't know how he gets his hands on a uniform.
Oh, he goes in like
Maybe he
some
could
staff
have
locker room
person
or
off
something,
screen.
right?
Oh yeah. I actually do see that. Yeah. Um, but this is a really nice little nod they do with the Joker as well. The fact that he takes a second to appreciate, like, because they're all watching this Charlie Chaplin film and he's also
Mhm.
watching it, which is kind of a reference to the fact that um like Joker is also kind of a fan of, well, in many continuities, kind of, he's a fan of classic comedians, and one of his favorites is Charlie Chaplin, and this is
Oh,
like a
right.
really famous, yeah, this is also a really famous bit from Charlie Chaplin. Don't know how you call it because I don't know, short or something. Where he's like, skating around this sort of like like right next to like this edge of like a drop, which isn't real, obviously, but um he's like just enjoying it. I'm surprised. This is another thing. When I was in cinema as well watching this, I was like really worried he was going to burst out laughing in the middle of this and sort of basically like
Ah,
give himself away. Like, it's one of the things that I kind of feel, if you haven't seen this before, which it's like the Dark Knight, everyone's seen it. You can really appreciate like seeing this for the first time, like kind of this keeps you on the edge of your seat basically the whole film because Phoenix is able to portray someone who could like you genuinely don't know what they're going to do next.
yeah, he's so
Uh,
intense, and it's just that, yeah, he's capable of anything at that moment.
yeah,
Yeah,
but he doesn't give a
I never really picked up on all that, to be honest. That's yeah, really, actually, like, quite significant. Yeah, it could have happened. Yeah, but it doesn't. He goes to meet. He spots Thomas Wayne, so he goes to meet him in
yeah,
the
goes off
bathroom.
to one thing I
Right? So I
found
was like,
funny in this.
yeah, definitely. He's taking a piss,
He
and then
stares
like
at him,
just
just
stood
stares at him
staring at
pissing.
him doing so. It's
Like
like
for I
strange.
counted as well. It's for a good 10 seconds. He's just staring at him like in the
Yeah,
urinal.
yeah,
He's like, "Can I help you, pal?" Which is like, if someone had been staring at me pissing, I'd be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Like,
yeah. Not a great way to, but he's so like. I mean, it's
probably
strange
like,
because and again, this film is so effective at making you like giving you a vision into both sides of the fence, because no one wants to be disturbed while they're taking a piss, right? And your reaction would be the same as Thomas Wayne or mine. Just you're gonna go and fucking chin this guy. Why is he staring at me taking a piss? It's like you want to fight. But obviously, what Arthur Fleck is going through is potentially meeting his dad, right?
yeah, exactly.
So he's probably not even aware of what he's doing at that moment. He's just so like, so emotionally like all over the place. He's like, oh, he just wants a hug, effectively, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, he even said it himself. But like,
yeah,
yeah, he's like, oh yeah, like like look at us, like you're my dad, right? You know my mum, and then there's something that I found interesting with the fact that um like Thomas Wayne does know who Penny Fleck is just
hmm
from like knowing hearing the name, which like could have potentially fueled people thinking, oh, he actually is his dad, but because it's not like he didn't even know those three people who were killed because he employs so many people. The fact that he
right,
knew her, who knows? But then he gets like like progressively more frustrated as also Fleck gets more frustrated with him. He's like, maybe I don't know why everyone's so rude. I don't know why you're like this. he like this is really the point where he's like like completely fed up of everything. He's like, what about some DC? Like what about what about a hug? Dad. And then like this guy just fucking punched him in the face, man. Because
Yeah.
he's also like, if you go near my kid again, I'll fucking kill you. Like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
also like that's another good point. Like if I'd met the guy who like been stalking my kid basically, like I'd be
Yeah,
like
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
like
that's right.
but yeah, it's the way they both see it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just yeah, it's a powerful moment, and obviously Arthur is gutted by this, and he gets the next thing we see is in his flat, and he gets inside the fridge to kill himself, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
this is something I pointed out. Like I thought to myself, I wrote my notes. This is not the fault of the film, but I can't not think of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull when he gets in the fridge. Like when Indiana Jones gets in the fridge to
oh,
survive.
I haven't seen it. I didn't know
Oh
that.
man,
Doesn't
like
doesn't
there's
matter,
got
but
like
yeah,
nuking
I
the
think I
fridge,
heard about
man.
that though. Yeah, luckily that doesn't. Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, well, luckily I haven't seen it. It didn't have that effect on me. I was just like, oh, it's just. Although I wasn't aware I basically between the first and second viewing this film, I listened to a podcast reviewing this film as well, and they did a lot of research into how the fact that back in I think back in the 60s or something like that, fridges had a lock on them or something, and they could like close, and people would do that either to kill themselves or to or they would accidentally do so. They'd accidentally lock themselves in the fridge. I'm not really
Yeah,
sure
you
about
accidentally get in your fridge. Yeah, as well. That is true.
like
Like there's definitely
like kids playing around or whatever. They would get trapped in the fridge or whatever.
yeah, true.
And they had to like
Um,
redesign fridges so they had just the mechanism that they have now to open and close.
hmm,
But
yeah,
anyway, so he tries to do that, and I don't know. Obviously, it's like a failed suicide attempt, but I don't know if that's interrupted. If he hears the phone ring from inside the fridge, or if he gets out the fridge later on and then hears the phone call. I'm not. I guess must have been the latter.
yeah. Who knows? Yeah,
But yeah, he gets a call to appear on the Murray Frank. Why can't I say that name? Murray Franklin show.
Franklin Murray.
Murray, yeah. But yeah, he gets a call to appear on that show, and he's like, but because he's seen himself being mocked on it, he has a very different reaction to like maybe what you'd expect. He's like, he's not like excited or happy. He's just like, oh, thinking how he
Yeah,
can
he
use
knows.
that.
He probably knows he's going to be taking the piss out on it.
Yeah, he's just come out of a failed suicide attempt. He's like he's now he's really he's like really like I don't know. Even at this point, I don't know if he's really rock. He feels like he's at rock bottom. Obviously, he's just trying to take his own life. But it gets even worse for him later on. He's not aware of that, but he's just like really. He's just like his mum's in hospital. He's been rejected by his own dad, although he's not really sure. I think at this point, so he goes to visit Arkham Asylum. Now,
Hmm.
although at
Yes,
this point
this.
it's Arkham State Hospital, right?
Yeah, but I have to say, like, the set of it is like designed really well. Like, especially when you see the outside of it, it's like quite a foreboding place. And when you
Yeah,
go inside as well, like, it's
yeah,
already he's going up in this like terrible lift with like this guy's like screaming and like
yeah,
tied down
man.
his head and shit.
Yeah.
Um, like again, it's another thing where like it hits so differently when you're in the cinema. Like, it's like it feels like you're in there with him. Like,
Oh yeah.
he's just going through like this sort of like you can tell like when they originally made it, like because it probably would have been pristine white and so on. But now it's all like broken down, like
Yeah,
look quite a
dilapidated.
bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like slightly dirty, which is it's like kind of I wouldn't say it's kind of ironic sort of in the fact that it's meant to be like a sort of pristine looking place, but it's like even that's falling apart. Um, and
Yeah, for
I do
sure.
quite like the look of it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's very like foreboding. It's very like overbearing. Like the whole building. It's like, and it's funny because it's not. You expect it to say Arkham Asylum, but it says Arkham State Hospital. But then when you get inside, it is very much asylum-like, right? And yeah, you see the guy
Yeah.
like on the stretcher next to him, and it's like very. It's just very disturbing, and it's very uncomfortable, And it's like So he's going up there to try and find records of his mum. Um, I can't remember what actually leads him to do this though. Is it something Thomas Wayne says? I
Yeah, it's
think.
because Thomas Wayne's like, oh yeah, man, like she was like she was a Mr. Arkham State Hospital or something along
Oh,
those
okay.
lines.
Yeah, so he goes
Just,
to like check the
this just
records
really really
there, and then
sick.
there's like a clerk there who's just like, oh, I think Arthur says something. Yeah, Arthur's like showing some very like red flags, right, for this guy. He's
Yeah, because
this guy works in this hospital, so he's seen a lot of people come and go, right? And he's like, probably very, but he's not paid to, or he's not trained to deal with that shit, right? So he's like, yeah, man, maybe you should
yeah,
see
he
someone.
was like, yeah, there's the funny thing as well, because like,
This actor's
yeah, he was
really
like,
good, by
oh,
the way. He's just effectively a cameo, but he's like him in this film is like very,
he's very good in
he's
the like
yeah,
few minutes he's
fantastic,
in.
fantastic.
It's he's like just briefly like Fleck is like, oh yeah, last time I took out some guys, and then this guy is like, he has a really good face where he's just paused for a second. He's like,
Oh, yeah, he
okay,
starts reading his
um,
file, right, or his mum's file, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you said you're a son, her son, right?" And he's
and
like
he's like, I
reading
don't
this
know if
shit.
I
Like,
should read all of this out, and then he's like, well, I need her signature, and he's like packing it away, and he probably wants to fucking get out of there, but he
yeah,
can't.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then like especially when like you should like I can remember like Phoenix's face is pulling throughout when he's hearing the record. He's like,
mm,
it's like indescribable, man. Like he's just
mm,
hearing like
mm.
he's already, when he read that letter that his mum wrote, like his worldview got turned upside down again, and now it's being turned upside down again. Like if he thought he couldn't do it already, um, and like it's the last thing you want to hear again after all of this, and then he immediately just because he obviously can't get his mum's signature because he's in the hospital. He just like rips this like file from this guy's hands and just runs. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
um,
And is it this moment where he's like, yeah, he sees like, oh, he was handcuffed to the radiator and shit. It's like,
yeah, his views and so on.
then it's like, yeah, really, really, really dark and fucked up. It's showing this like, how, he was just abused as a kid, physically, mentally, emotionally. It just goes from bad to worse. That he was adopted as well, right?
Yeah, as well, and that there's like when you read some of the stuff because it's like focuses on certain things
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what he's reading, like years of abuse. I caught out of the corner of my eyes like his mum had a lobotomy at one point. Um, but and there's a bit as well where like she's talking to a therapist or psychiatrist or
Oh, yeah,
something.
that's right. And it's like he's
Like
in the corner.
like I she was like, oh, he was always such a happy boy, which like you feel really bad for him as well. Like, and he's like, obviously this isn't real because
Mhm.
he's like stood in the corner, sort of like standing there in judgment, looking at her, and he's like at this point you don't know what he's thinking. And at this as well, like when you cut to the end of him reading it, he's laughing still.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not a stressful situation, but this revelation or whatever, it's probably like broken his brain or whatever. And this is probably the where it shows most, where he's I don't know how Phoenix manages, but he's like laughing and also crying at the exact same time. And he's
Mhm.
like you can clearly tell he's hurting like so much, which is like impressive to see like an actor manage to pull off this
I
way.
think it's. I think at this point, this is where he really hits rock bottom. This is like the low. Now it's like his whole world's been taken apart. His mum's been lying to him the whole time. He's just like completely like fucked up, and he even realizes, and the significance of that laugh as well is the fact that it turns out he's been told that as a condition when actually it's shown here it was probably actually the result of some brain injury, some head injury he received, at the hands of his father. He's like beaten and shit, and he's like, and some trauma to the head, right? That's what it says, and
Yeah,
that's probably what caused that condition that he has, and he's like realizes it is at the hands of his own, his own family, whatever, right? And his childhood. So it's like it's even hard to talk
yeah,
about,
it's
man. It's
so
like really
depressing.
fucked up, man. Yeah, like really dark
Yeah,
shit.
like yeah, again, to point out, like he's like I remember this, like he's like laughing and he's simultaneously laughing and crying to the point of having like a runny nose, like if you ever had
Yeah,
that
yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like I don't know how he pulled that off. Like
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's just devastating. He's just gutting. Um, and then the next thing he does, he he goes to his neighbor's flat, and he sits down on a sofa, and she's like, "Well, what the fuck? You know what you're doing here? You're the guy from next door, right?" Whatever. And he's just like, and it's at this moment you realize that it was all a dream, effectively, in
Yeah.
terms of his relationship with
The
her.
real
And it's
name's
just like,
Arthur, isn't it? Like maybe. It's
yeah,
like
yeah. It
Andy.
just and then you're just like, wow, it's just shattered. And the first time seeing this film, you're just like, oh, it's like this is a confusing moment. You're like, oh, so none of that was real. Um, the thunder. I've just heard like lightning and some
Yeah, I
thunder.
heard that too. I'm like, what the fuck?
Fuck. So yeah. So
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there's. Yeah.
that's real, by the way. That's not an effects I've added into this audio clip. This is like actual thunder. So that was like, wow, timing
Yeah,
there.
if that's upset the mood.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's unsettling. Fuck.
Yeah.
So yeah, he realizes it's all a fantasy, and he's like, So that's taken from him as well, even though it was never really there. But it's just like really hits home at that moment. Um, and what is it he says to her as well? They have like a little conversation, right?
Well, he's like, I had a really bad day. That's all he says essentially, and he does like a little thing where he's like pretends to shoot himself.
Ah, that's
Um,
right. Yeah, and he's
this
like,
game,
and he says that
yes, yeah, sorry.
I've had a really bad day because, up until this point, he's had this fantastical relationship with her where he's opening up to her, he's sharing his life with her, and this is a moment he actually wants to do that for real now. But he's so far removed from reality, especially with her, that it's just like, it really comes to a head where she's like, can you please leave? She's like, this actress is phenomenal as well. She's like really terrified. She's like really afraid. Similar to like the lady on the bus from before as well. Just like, but obviously this is far more of a threatening. This guy's just let himself in your flat, and
Yeah, I
she's
wonder
got a young
how though,
son
because
there. She's just put him to sleep, and she's just terrified.
yeah, I
Very
really
uns.
wonder how like really wonder how she because also did she just leave her apartment door unlocked or something?
Well,
Or
yeah,
you know,
yeah. Um,
maybe she's just like so busy with her life, who knows? But yeah, this is the thing as well. Again, like when I was seeing this first in cinema, like this is another one of those scenes where I was like, is he like gonna go crazy and kill both of them or something? Like, because you really didn't know what he was gonna do at this point. Like
yeah.
after having genuinely lost everything, he thought this Thomas Wayne was his dad. No, he isn't. His dad, well, first of all, bangs him. Then he got beaten by another dad, and then his mum's like basically dead and also was lying to him and so on. And now Murray's invited him on his show after making fun of him to like most people watching TV and so on.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what
This is
else could you possibly lose from that?
well, this is it. Yeah, this is what like this is really his rock bottom. He's really at rock bottom now, and so he goes to the hospital, and he says this stuff to his mum, who's in a coma, I believe. We skipped over that as well because it's the fact that when he sees her go into hospital, the last conversation he had with her was a fight, right?
Yeah,
So the last thing they ever got to say to each other was just this moment of hostility and bad blood, and it's just and that's it. But then he
yeah.
discovers that obviously
Also,
she was lying to him. She abused him. She's like a big reason of why he's got these conditions that he's got, and he kills her. He takes the pillow and smothers her.
yeah, seriously, yeah. And this is the thing that also I don't know why I didn't notice this until this film. Sorry, to this viewing of this film, and the fact that she calls him Happy, like as his like nickname for him, and I was like,
Mm.
that's depressing as fuck because she calls him Happy all the time, and like also is like he's always such a happy young boy, and then he's like sort of almost like mocking that. He's like, I haven't been happy like one single minute in my entire fucking life, like before he kills her.
Mhm.
Because it's like it's ironic for him because he's like probably the most depressed person like in like a 5 mile radius there. Like, yeah, I don't know. They pull basically everything with him to be honest.
Mhm. Yeah, and they just and then he smothers her. He puts the pillow on her, and you hear the heart monitor go. I don't know why it doesn't. You don't hear the flatline sound. Like you hear it in every film. I don't know why they omitted that, but yeah,
I don't
man,
know.
he just kills his own mum, and it's like, it's like so fucked up. Um, and then he goes back home, and he plans his suicide. He's planning to go on the Murray show. He's like rehearsing it, and
Yeah,
how he's gonna kill himself. He's like, oh, knock
this
knock,
is
which is notorious for being bad jokes. Knock knock jokes, like, you know. And he's like, yeah. So it's like a
yeah. He's gonna
bad
do
joke,
knock knock and
right?
then shoot himself. Yeah,
Yeah, knock knock is like this, just the byword for a bad joke, and that's what he wants to do. And like his life has been a bad joke, right? and
Yeah.
plans to kill himself live on air.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the thing he says as well. That reminds me. He says like, "Oh yeah, I used to think my life was a tragedy, and I realized it's a fucking comedy." And then I think that's
yeah,
when he kills his mom. But
yeah,
then, yeah, yeah, this is the part which I associated with being, like he's talking to himself, taxi driver bit. But it's not really. They're not really that similar, to be honest, at all. He's like a
no,
man. He's more planning out what he's gonna say on the show. He's even like rehearsing. I really enjoy watching this scene actually. Like he's like even rehearsing how he's gonna walk out because he's rewatching old clips of it that he's probably taped because he enjoys the show
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
much.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like
100%.
he's like yeah, he's like doing the even the hand waves and everything, like doing it exactly like one of the previous guests, and how to handshake
Yeah, yeah.
people, or who are also on the sofa already. And
And
yeah,
if I'm right, I think at this moment you also get to see the note he wrote in his book. I hope my death makes more sense than my life. Um,
yeah, something like that.
I
Yeah,
think
'cause
it
he's
certainly
like
does at the
trying to
end,
figure
but
out.
I think it might have. I feel like, or maybe subconsciously, I was just like, I remembered that. I remembered that line. It's just, like, oh, no, I think it is there. And he's just planning his suicide, and you're just like, fuck, this is like, it gives you just this sense of dread that like, what's going to happen now. Um,
Yeah,
so he
yeah. For a
basically
guy
plans
for a
his
guy who
suicide.
kills his
Wants to
mum,
do
he
it
can
at this
kill
moment.
anyone.
Yeah, because it's like I want my death to make more sense than my life. His life is like, as far as he's concerned, is has amounted to nothing. He's just been miserable. He's effectively ended his life by being robbed of, or all these things have been taken away from him. His job, his meds, his mom, his fantasy relationship, XYZ. And now he's just like, he's got no absolutely. I mean, he didn't have much to live for in the first place, but now he's really got nothing, and he's just like, well, now I have a chance to just make my death worth something. And he's gonna kill himself on TV for everyone to see, right? So
Yeah, just to remind them that he actually existed, I assume. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
exactly. And as he's doing this, I don't know if it's exactly after this, but like we,
yeah, he's
he
buying
gets a
his
knock on the
hair
door.
dye.
Yeah, he gets an.
Oh,
Oh
but
yeah,
just
that's right. He's
beforehand,
preparing.
he's in the middle of doing his,
It's the day of the
Joker
show.
stuff.
Yeah, right. He's doing his makeup, and he's like halfway through doing it, and he gets a knock on the door from his clown colleagues.
Yeah,
They
the
come to
big
visit
guy and the
him.
small guy.
Yeah, and you think it's like, oh, this is a nice moment. He does have people that care about him. Obviously, the big guy
Yeah.
reveals himself not to. He's just there so he can like clear up, so he doesn't get in any trouble for the gun thing.
Yeah, but it's quite funny. He has a little bit with the yeah, the short guy as well. He's like saying, "Oh, well," he's like, "Yeah, they came and questioned me," and he's like, "Oh, well, they didn't question me," and he's like, "That's because the suspect's a regular sized person. If it had been a
Yeah,
dwarf,
yeah,
then you'd
yeah,
be in prison by now."
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
a bit
That's
of
right. And
inappropriate humor in this film, but
yeah, yeah, and this put the midget. He's there for genuine reasons. He's like, and you get to hear a little bit later on where
yeah, he brought his own
Fleck goes,
boxers along.
you're the only one who was nice to me. And it's just really like really gut wrenching moment. You just get this little insight into this guy's life where it's just like what he's going through as well. All these characters, they're all just like really troubled people, and you get to see and obviously it's the big guy who kind of kick-started all these events, right, by handing him the gun,
Yeah,
which he never asked for. And it's that gun which basically spiraled him down now into this descent into insanity, effectively, or at least suicidal. Well, although he was suicidal before, but obviously the events of this film effectively happen as a result of him receiving this gun from this guy. And this guy's only there; he's not there for genuine reasons to like check on his mate. He's just there to, you know,
yeah, to make sure our stories line up.
yeah, that's right, to cover himself. And Arthur Fleck just stabs him. He just kills him very violently as
Yeah,
well.
he's got like a pair of scissors, man. And I gotta say as well,
Mm,
again, seeing this like when I was seeing this in the cinema, this built up dread so much when you see the scissors in his hands, like when
mm.
he kills him, like it's so gory, man. Like he just
Yeah,
stabs him.
it's
He
so
stabs him
violent. Yeah,
once in the neck. He stabs him in the eye and so on.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
yeah,
just stabs him like 50 times, like right against the wall, and, like smashes his head.
yep,
And you got like the
yeah,
other
yeah.
guy. He's like, oh, what the fuck, man? Like, what the fuck, Arthur? And he's like, yeah, and also like directly afterwards, he's like, you don't know if he's gonna kill him as well, like afterwards,
Mm.
like having seen this, but yeah, like you've got like this whole scene's just like full of dread.
Yeah, and he's like, no, it's okay, you can leave. And then he does like a fake out, like a joke, you know. He's like, oh,
No, I'm gonna get
oh
you.
yeah, I'm gonna kill you, whatever. And then he doesn't. He's like, oh, I'm joking. And then the guy can't even reach up to the lock to let himself out, and it's just terrifying because like Alpha, he gets up and he's like, you just don't know, man, you know. And then
Yeah, he's
and
still
then
like
he's like
covered in
really
blood as well.
slow about it. He's just drawing it out, and he's just as he's about to, and then he says something. He's like, oh, you know, you're the only one who's nice to me, and then he lets him out. But oh, it's so like unsettling that scene. You just like, and you don't want the little guy to die. You know, he's like one of the only. He's like he's the nicest guy in the film, and Arthur literally says that to him. He's like, you know, like, oh, you're the only one who's ever nice to me, or didn't laugh at me or something. You know, and
Yeah, he's the only one who's never nice to me. Yeah, and I
yeah,
feel bad for him as well.
got,
Like at least he got to live. You know, that was one
yeah,
upside
yeah.
there.
But then what for? He just goes back to his life of misery, man. You know, just like they all are.
I wouldn't want to see him get stabbed with scissors. You
No,
know.
no, no one does. Yeah, exactly. It's just so you know so sad. So yeah, so he
Yeah,
lets
so he
him
lets him get
lets him
away.
go, and then we see him. He's in his full Joker costume, and we actually get the
Yeah,
shot.
they've got the music going.
Yeah, that's right. And he's like now he's like he's feeling good about himself, you know, because he's like he's like now it's all gonna be finally over. His life is gonna be over. He's planned it all out, and this is like his last dance, literally, because he starts dancing
Yeah,
down the
all the way down the
steps.
steps.
Yep.
Yeah,
And he's like, he just has this moment of like liberation where he's like, he knows he's going to kill himself now. He's going to die. His life is going to be over. Finally, he's like, you know,
yeah, he can smoke as many cigarettes as he wants without,
yeah, he's like really
without
relieved now. He's like feeling, you know, he's just like, because now he's got a purpose as well. You know, now he's going to like, he's going to make this moment in history, or you know, he's going to like actually do something which he feels is worthwhile. You know, and he's just feeling really good about himself now. So now he's dancing. He's like in his full suit costume, and he's like, you know, really like, well, he's on. I'm possibly even happy, you know, at this moment. He's just like, you know, now he's gonna do something which gives him a purpose. So but anyway, even that's robbed from him because as he's towards the bottom of the stairs, you see
yeah.
at the
The two
top,
detectives are,
yeah, the detectives are after him, so they're like chasing him.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah. He
yeah,
runs
man.
off. He tanks a full hit from a car. May I point out?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
he's just running across. It's like indicative of like the scene of him at the beginning where he's running to get the sign back.
yeah.
Like the car doesn't stop in time. He just smashes right into the windshield. He rolls over. I don't know how he wouldn't die or like break something from that, but he just keeps going, man.
Yeah, it keeps going
But
onto a train again. The detectives are
yeah,
trying
there's
to
a lot of
chase
clown
him.
protests.
Yeah, there's a bunch of clowns there, and like you know, he takes the mask from one of them. He's trying to get away from the detectives. They're all going to a protest, right? So
Yeah,
he takes one of their masks, ironically, to
starts a
disguise
fight.
himself. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then yes, there's a fight that starts, and then the detectives get involved in that, and one of them
yeah,
shoots, like misfires or whatever, and he kills someone. So then it's like an
yeah. They
all-out brawl at that moment, and they're like kicking the shit out of these police officers, you know. And
yeah, yeah, Joker gets a little dance in front of him, like taking the mick out of him.
yeah, 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 and you're almost like, you know, this film has really got you in a moment where you're like, yeah, fuck them, you know, like, you know, it's almost like, yeah, they deserve that, and even though they don't, they're just kind of doing their job, right? But it's still like,
Yeah,
you know, this film's got you totally on side now with Arthur Fleck, you know, he's just like, oh yeah,
yeah,
you know,
even
like,
if he is wrong. Yeah,
yeah, and it's like, it's almost like, yeah, you know, not Arthur Fleck so much, but you're like, you would be part of
you
that
can
movement as
understand.
well. You perhaps, you know, you join that protest because you're like, yeah, you know, it's like really making a movement, you know, like fuck, you know, fuck the rich or whatever, you know, like that kind of kill the rich, whatever it's saying there. That you can definitely see that happening in today's society. Some kind of demonstration like that could very easily, you know, happen, and as a result of you know what's happening in this film, in this universe.
Yeah,
And
it's a funny thing as well.
yeah,
There's a funny thing with this too because all these protests and so on, like with clowns and stuff, that actually ends up coming to the real world because in a lot of protests, like I think there's protests in Chile, like very soon after this, or even at the same
in
time.
Chile.
There are loads of people. Yeah, there are loads of people dressing up as Joker as well. There's even like a funny video of I don't know if this is actually related to any of these, but of like someone dressed up as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker skateboarding, doing some massive skateboard trick.
All right.
Um, but yeah, there's like in other countries like Lebanon and Iraq and so on, like people are like
Really?
protesting, and they like you got a few of these lot popping up, and even apparently even in the 2020 George Floyd protests, you had a couple of them popping up too. But um,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not
that's weird to
surprised.
think
And
actually
yeah.
those two aren't too far apart.
Well, that's what always happens with these films that are like such cultural phenomenons. I mean, as well in V for Vendetta, you've got the anonymous masks. That there's a movement in that film. Far worse film than this, in my opinion. I think that film was like terrible. But anyway, but still, the point of the film is like to create some kind of movement and etc. Joker as well, and also I guess a mask you often see at protests is from the Casa de Papel as well. The I forget what that mask is. What that mask actually is from, but anyway, you'd recognize it if I showed it to you. I'll show it to you later.
Yeah,
But people will know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
But anyway, oh fuck! I wish I could remember the name of that mask now, but it doesn't matter. So anyway, so
yeah.
this
But
is
this, yeah,
yeah. Anyway, so this riot, this protest actually helps him out. He's able to escape from these police officers, and he arrives at the studio where the Murray Franklin show is happening, right?
yeah, he
So
gets his little name in as well.
that's right. So he's in the dressing room getting ready, and he's like, "Oh, this is the moment." He's like really built. It's really built up now. And the guy, and Robert De Niro comes in. He's like, comes in to meet him. And the producer next to him's like, "Nah, fuck this. We can't have him on. He's wearing this suit. You've heard what's happening on the news. Blah blah blah. These drug protests." He's like, "No, no, we should let him on. Like if that's whatever, as long as he denounces it, or whatever."
Yeah, it's like,
Um,
I'm not political anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's like, "I don't care about politics, whatever."
yeah. This is the bit where he gets to have his request, where he's like, when you introduce me, can you introduce me as Joker?
Yeah,
This is like, yeah, the first time you actually get to hear it, essentially.
yeah, yeah,
At the
yeah.
very
That's
end of
right.
the film, that payoff.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, although it kind of always irks me, it doesn't say, "Can you introduce me as the Joker?" It just bugs me like Joker. It's like, I don't know. The
Oh,
Joker
but
has
he's not.
more
This
impact.
is the thing, and probably they're even aware this isn't really the Joker, but
Well, yeah, that's true. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, he gets to meet, and this is the first time he actually meets Murray Franklin as well, which is like really like big moment for him. And he's like, yeah,
yeah,
um,
but some completely different situation. Yeah,
yeah, and he's like he's hiding the fact that he like, he's like he knows that he's like being brought on there to be mocked, but he's like, like, oh yeah, basically playing along as though this guy is still a hero to him, right?
yeah. Maybe he's preempting it as well with the fact that he's dressed as a clown.
Yeah. And
Someone
anyways,
who is not.
then
Yeah,
he comes on the show. He's introduced. There's like just how he imagines it. Basically, the audience, the spotlight. He goes over to the doctor that's there. There was a guest on the show, and like fully kisses her. It's like and then ignores the guy behind her. Whatever. It's like,
yeah. That's the thing I thought was really funny. I wrote down like Sigma when he like completely airs the dude and like right next.
oh yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
It's just like because he'd practiced like in his apartment, he shakes both their hands, but so he just completely airs this guy and sits
Yeah,
down.
yeah. Yeah, he sits down and this is it. This is the moment. This is like the climax of the film. So
Yeah, because he's like sat there like completely like like silent almost, and then Frank Murray's like he always has to crack a joke every 5 seconds to keep everyone's
mhm,
attention. He's
yeah,
like, "You're right there," and he's like, "No, yeah, it's just how I imagined it." And he's like, "Well, that makes one of us." Because yeah, this is quite like Murray is actually pretty funny throughout this whole thing, which is obviously good for someone who's playing a comedian.
well, yeah,
Um, and I liked it. Although I found it ironic when he's like, he asks him, like, "Oh, you want to tell us a joke?" And he like makes
well,
fun of him for having this joke book, and he's like,
yeah,
"Well, like Murray has like a fucking Bible's worth of like notes on his table anyway, so like he's
mhm.
a bit of a hypocrite." But
Yeah, that's right. And he just, I want to make sure I get it right. And obviously, no one knows what's going on except the audience and after that, they know he's like preparing to kill himself. And it's so like tense because he's like, and the second, you know what? I think the second time watching this film was I got even more out of it than the first time. First time I was just following it along. Second time I was just like the dread, and it's even more dread because I know what happens, but I'm like, it's so fucking powerful, man, because
yeah,
it really draws it out each other. I think I got even more of an emotional experience this time than I did the first time. I was like, wow, you know, because he's there and he's like looking for the joke and he says knock knock, and you know Murray Franken's like, oh what, you know, you serious, whatever, da da da.
You had to look that one up. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like he doesn't even know what's happening, what's about to happen. He's just on a completely different planet to where Arthur Fleck is, and he's like about to fucking kill himself, and he's like, no, you know, just go along with it, knock knock, you know, and then he's
It's
like, yeah,
weird as well because at this point you think he's gonna actually kill himself, but then like
yeah,
decides not to all of a sudden. Probably because like Murray, like throughout this whole time, he's making jokes at his expense.
mhm.
That might be to the point where he decides, I'm not gonna kill myself. I'm gonna kill him instead. You know.
Yeah, maybe you're right, because then he starts going, well, you know, you've just brought me on this show to mock me, to laugh at me, haven't you? And then
Although,
he
yeah,
goes,
it's a bit beforehand. There was a bit of a build up. I forget how it goes
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, oh,
yeah, it
yeah,
just
I mean,
progressively
obviously,
kind of
anyone
like
that's
pissed
listened
off.
to this has seen the film, right? So it's like, you know,
Yeah,
but you know, there's some moments here he's talking about, you know, he basically he confesses to killing those people, right? And he's
yeah.
like,
It's like,
yeah, and he's like, oh, you think that's funny? And he's like, yeah, you know, actually I do, whatever. It's like, oh, you know, it's like,
yeah,
and obviously Robert De Niro's like, oh, yeah, like, oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. Those young guys had a life from them, blah blah blah. He's like, you know, doing, oh, obviously, yeah, I mean, killings, whatever. It's like it's bad, obviously, but he's like, you know, he's doing the real, and yeah, the producer behind him, the camera is like, no, we should cut this. You know, he's like, no, let's keep going, man. He's like, you know, confronting him about it, and he's doing this kind of virtual signaling because obviously Murray Franklin doesn't give a shit about those guys. He's just using it as an opportunity to look good in front of the cameras, right? And he's like, yeah, you know,
yeah,
you did this, you did that, you're a bad person, blah blah blah. And he's like, well, you know, actually, and then he starts explaining his side of things, and he gives like a speech which gave me shades of John Doe in Seven. He's like talking about how society works and everything. It's like,
yeah. It's like if I was the one dead, you walk right
yeah, you
past me.
walk right over me and you can't get people's attention. These, and it reminded me of a really powerful line from John Doe where in Seven where he goes, you know, these days to get someone's attention you can't just tap them on the shoulder, you have to hit them with a sledgehammer. You know, it's like this speech just like really takes you on a ride, man. And he's like, yeah, you know, and
Yeah, but then he just gets dismissed though by Murray. He's like, yeah, there's so much self pity. I can't
yeah,
believe
yeah,
it. Like, I mean, like jumping back before, and I actually remember what his knock knock joke was. It's like unintentional. It's like a really dark. It makes no sense. He's like, oh yeah, knock knock. Oh yeah, it's the policeman. Your son's just been hit by a drunk driver. He's dead, which is like not even a joke. It's not even a joke. It's just like what the fuck.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's right.
Which is like, yeah, it like sets up everything else. So you realize, oh, he's not going to kill himself. He goes on this massive rant as well. And I don't know, like if you notice this, but every time seeing this, like you got that like slow build up of like, I don't know what instrument it is. Someone's hitting like a. It's not exactly a drum. It's like it just gets louder and louder each time. Like it's a build up of something.
Mhm.
Um, like before he shoots him, he's like it's like everyone here is awful. And he's like, oh, you're awful, Murray.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he pulls out his revolver and yeah, he shoots him in the head. Like,
Yeah, he's like, what do you
he,
get? He's like, "Look, how
yeah,
about another joke? He's like,
yeah. It's like, no, we've
what do
heard
you
enough
get?
jokes, and and he starts talking over him
I think
anyway.
we've
You know?
had enough of your jokes. Yeah, it's like, and what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with society that treats him like trash and forgets him and so on?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you get exactly what you deserve. Bang.
yeah, you get what you fucking deserve, and he shoots him, man.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, and funny enough, it's like the first f bomb in the whole film, right? You think like, oh, you know, but it's like so much impact when he says it. You get what you fucking deserve. And it's so
Yeah,
like he's so satisfied when he says it. And he just fucking empties the gun into
yeah,
his
he shoots
hero,
him
you know, earlier in
once.
the film. You know.
The thing that I forget as well, like he gets up again and he just shoots
Yeah.
him again, and like either screams even more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a bit on this. I don't know why this. I forget this happens every time I've seen it, but it's always really funny to me. Where like he's just he's proud of himself. Everyone's running around, and then he goes up, grabs one of the cameras, points it to himself, and he's like, and he
Man.
says the catchphrase that
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
ends
Yeah.
Murray's show. It's like, and remember, folks, and he gets cut off
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh,
I
I'm getting
always find that
goosebumps, man.
really
It's
funny.
fucking so powerful this moment. Oh, it's crazy. Like what? It's just so unexpected as well. I can't imagine what that must have been like seeing. Unfortunately, I think the first time I saw this film, that had been spoiled for me. I think I saw it, but I didn't really register that it was from the film. I just saw it. I was like, I saw this clip. I don't. So I kind of, I think up in the build up to the scene, I kind of remembered that that was going to happen or something. I don't know. It wasn't like quite the. But what was that like watching that in the cinema? Like,
God, I can't tell you, man. It was like it's like that build up with that music because especially cinema like most
yeah,
of the time they've got it really loud. The like it's the music like I said the build up like the dun 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 like it gets like really fucking loud right up to the point where he just pulls out the gun and shoots him in the head. Like it's like that was like I wouldn't really say it's out of pocket, but like it's like so sudden. It's like and you can kind of see it coming. Like you got that dread, but you don't know exactly when he's gonna do it. So
mm,
um yeah, when he shoots Murray, it's like really like it's like shocking, which is like yeah, I don't really know how to say like it's hard to put into words. Like
yeah, and it's obviously in this. This just is his real like in that he just doesn't care anymore. He's just like completely. He's like he's gone basically insane now. This is the point where he's like, well, whatever. Now I'm just gonna. I don't care anymore. Like whatever. Like And it's funny, yeah, he decides instead of killing himself, he kills this guy, like this person who's just antagonizing him, and he just want, and yeah. So then he's driven off in a police car, like exactly the same as, well, not exactly the same, but it's just the same shot of
yeah,
like,
very indicative of Heath
Heath
Ledger.
Ledger in
Yeah,
the police car, right? Like that same angle,
yeah, he doesn't
very,
stick his head.
very like direct homage there, and yeah, and then he's driven this police car through the riots. We see we see just amazing how they put it in there. They just slip it in there where you just see the Waynes coming out, Thomas and Martha Wayne and Bruce Wayne coming out of the Zorro, and um and they're killed in the alleyway as well. It's just like wow, we get
Yeah, I
pearls
had
of
to.
course.
Yeah. I put down as well. Like they restrained themselves with the poles this time.
Yeah, but they had them in there, right? They had to make sure.
Yeah, they were there. But there's
Yeah,
also a
man,
funny thing.
it's amazing
There's a
how
funny
they
thing I
just put
found
that in
out as
there,
well.
and it's like what was quite satisfying that it's like a marriage of all the previous um Batman origin stories for the Waynes being killed because in Batman '89, it's the Joker that kills Bruce's parents, but then
Dark Knight
in
trilogy.
yeah in the Dark Knight trilogy and also in Batman vs Superman, it's just like a faceless criminal, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, Joker.
And in this film, in Joker, they actually marry the two. It's like a faceless criminal, but with a Joker mask, and I think that's just really interesting. Like, I must have been
Yeah,
intentional. It's just like I like the way they did that. Um, and then yeah, and then obviously in the police car, it's smashed into by a van, whatever, by a truck, and they
yeah,
rescue Arthur Fleck. They pull him out, and
yeah.
they
Even though
just
he's like battered.
yeah, he's unconscious.
No, I had to
Sure, he
note down
killed the two
especially when
drivers as well. And
yeah,
then they just gather around him, and he's basically like they worship him. He's like gets on the car and he starts dancing. Doing his strange dance,
yeah,
and
like
it's like a
spreads
real moment.
blood across his face.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a big Joker
yeah, that's
smile.
right, that's
It's the
right.
thing.
Yeah,
The
so
thing that I
cool.
noted down as well. Like he is the fact that this is the first time in a DC film that concedes that a major character is affected by car crashes when he gets hit
Yeah,
because like
yeah, 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 yeah.
he's like he has to be carried up there. He's like half dead.
Hmm. And
But yeah,
unfortunately, the film, the studio, whatever the producer, they didn't have the guts to end the film there, and I don't think they're supposed to, because obviously films have like an obligation legally to show consequences of crimes and stuff. So instead of
yeah,
ending the film there, which I kind of wish they had, but for obvious reasons they
yeah.
can't.
Probably would have caused even more chaos.
Yeah, yeah, they just show him in Arkham Asylum, um, in his padded cell effectively, and
Yeah, he's talking to another therapist.
I
It's
think
like a
it's the
mirror.
same one, isn't it?
No, it's a different one.
You sure? I think that
I
she
remember.
got assigned to him, like because she lost the job, but then probably found a new one at Arkham doing the same job.
No,
Was it not
I'm
the
pretty
same?
sure they're different people.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
well, either way, yeah, he's just yeah, he's in Arkham Asylum and he walks off. He walks off into the. It's ironic because it's like he walks off and there's sunset at the end of the tunnel, but he at the end of the room, but he doesn't go in there. And he goes through a door and then through another door, and there's like blood footprints and stuff. That was a little bit like, I don't know, a bit of a strange ending for me, to be honest. But still, yeah. And he says to the therapist as well, he's like, oh,
Yeah, I've got a great joke, but you wouldn't get it.
yeah, you wouldn't get it. Yeah, that's right. And and that's it. That's the end of the film, right? So
Yeah, it is. Which is I remember seeing that in cinema. And I was like, oh yeah, obviously, like you said, they have to show consequences for it. I was like, I do wish they, in ideally, I wish they ended it of him on the
yeah,
car, but
yeah.
yeah, felt like this they just had to put that there just in case.
Well, that is Joker, ladies and gentlemen. So this is obviously a bit of a longer episode. We're going to wrap it up now with obviously the rankings. We've got a few things to rank here, actually. First of
Yeah,
which is Bruce Wayne.
yeah,
So
exactly. The first thing you think of in this film.
yeah, we've got a child Bruce Wayne we need to rank here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where would you?
And
Yeah,
where are we going to put him? I vote to put him above George Clooney, to be honest.
I've also put him above George Clooney, and I
Yeah,
have a feel. I feel you only included this just to shit on George Clooney even
yeah,
more.
yeah, for sure, man. Fuck him. His fucking face, man.
Kid is zero lines. He does better than George
Yep,
Clooney.
yep, definitely. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing what you mentioned about the clothing now. Yeah, you're right. Well, anyway, okay, that was easy. Alfred. Where are we going to put this Alfred? Do you want to put him above or below fucking Michael Goff?
uh, I don't know with this one because he's like in it for he's like in there for 5 seconds. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
even know
I
if
mean,
they
we're
call.
not rating this Alfred at all. We're just using it as an opportunity to fucking punish Michael Goff. But I don't know. I think that's maybe a little bit too cruel,
I
man.
think that's too harsh because Michael Goff,
Yeah,
weirdly, I mean,
it's not really his
he
fault.
has
Like
good moments.
he was given the lines and shit, man. I think yeah, it'd be a little bit cruel to do that. We're
Yeah,
gonna
exactly. And also, like, he does have Michael Goff did have some good moments.
yeah, his moments,
Funny
and
enough,
he
in
looks.
Batman
You know, I will
Forever,
give him. He
Batman,
looks the part. He looks the part. I'll give him that at least.
yeah, he has a good, yeah, in Batman and Robin, were like one of the worst films ever. Like, even he's weirdly like one of the highlights somehow, despite the fact they've got that plot of him dying and so on. I don't know.
I don't know. Fuck whatever. Anyway, fuck this.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't want to talk
Okay.
about.
Now we're gonna rank the Jokers. This is very tough now. You know, before I would have said this was like an easy third, but now I'm like debating shit, man. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, you think he's above Jared Leto?
Well, of course he's above Jared Leto, but I
Yeah,
don't know. Him and Heath Ledger
you're
is that?
considering putting him above Heath Ledger even.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I think you're gonna get a few bricks through your window if you do that.
I'll have to go into witness protection like you.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
You're gonna
come
get a
on.
few
I don't
people.
think that's unfair to say, right? I mean, what Joaquin Phoenix does is like Heath Ledger's Joker, and then takes it to the next level in a sense. But then again, I think Joaquin Phoenix's Joker never happens without Heath Ledger's one. So
Yeah, exactly. Because Heath Ledger, because like one of your main problems, sticking points with Heath Ledger, are the fact that he wasn't really the Joker, so
yeah,
to
that's
say.
true. That's true. Well, this is
He's
what I'm
nothing
saying.
like
That's
him.
why he took
Apply the
that
same with
Joker
Heath
then
Ledger.
to the next level. So yeah, I
Right.
mean, okay, yeah, I mean, I think we've got to put him third then, right?
Yeah, because I mean, Joaquin Phoenix,
I should just remind people as well that the current rankings are number one, Jack Nicholson, number two, Heath Ledger, and now number three, Joaquin Phoenix, number four, Jared Leto, number five, Cesar Romero.
yeah,
So
I mean yeah, for those who can't see this,
yeah,
um,
I need to think of my beautiful Spotify listeners, my audio listeners, man. Like I'm one of you, and I need to like remind myself that you guys can't see what I'm talking about.
yeah, exactly. Just to remind yourself as well beforehand, George Clooney is still at the bottom of the Bruce Wayne pile.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's the thing because Joaquin Phoenix is like he's definitely in the same tier of like all, especially the effort that he put in for this as well, like
yeah, yeah,
dedication
yeah,
and so on.
yeah.
Thankfully, he didn't die from it somehow. but
Yeah.
like for all that weight loss and so on. He yeah, his performance in this is just impressive, gotta say. Like he really sells his character so much, and like this film like entirely revolves around him. He doesn't even have like there's not even Batman sharing the
Yeah, there's
stage
no
with him. I mean,
Batman. Yeah, exactly. It's all
and I
solo.
also wants to point this out as well with this Joker though. It's a good point that they didn't bring Batman into this because like imagine if like Batman came up against this Joker, he'd beat the shit out of him. Like he's not even that smart, and he's like
Yeah, that's a good point.
he's like scrawny. He couldn't last in a fight. Like he couldn't even last in a fight against some kids. Like
Well, this is the
um
aspect of I guess we're getting a sequel for this film, and this is going to be interesting. Are they going to bring Batman into it? What they're going to do? They're bringing Harley Quinn
yeah,
into
we
it.
don't know.
So,
Yeah, but the fact that they've cast Harley Quinn, but they haven't, or maybe they haven't confirmed Batman even being in it for a surprise. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I think you can never see him sharing the screen with Batman ever, and
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
totally
that's true. Yeah, and yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. I mean, the stuff I level at Heath Ledger's Joker, I have to, yeah, exactly the same for Joaquin Phoenix. It's far from comic book accurate. It's like, so,
yeah. He should
yeah,
yeah
I
he
mean,
should
yeah,
have
he has
killed
to go
Mario
third.
with like
I mean, I've
the
got to
joy
say,
buzzer.
absolutely fucking phenomenal, man. Like, what a performance! And what a cultural icon he became. Just like Heath Ledger's Joker. Um, both like significantly, just significantly, like I say, like cultural icons now. That Joker, and both of them in such different ways. What strikes me looking at this list now is how different, how unique each of these Joker incarnations are. I mean, Caesar
Hmm.
Romero, it's like, but even him, he's like,
Yeah, Caesar Romero is different from them.
such a
Not even for
joke
the
like
wrong
looking at it
reasons.
now. But he's like, the his interpretation of the joke, his portrayal to Jack Nicholson's, which is so like iconic, and I don't think people talk about enough or are even aware of enough. But
Yeah.
fucking, he walked so the others could run. I think what I said about Joaquin Phoenix's Joker doesn't happen without Heath Ledger's. Heath Ledger's doesn't happen without Jack Nicholson. And
Yeah, and also like
really laid down the
yeah.
foundations for like what a joke. And actually, why I think the following Jokers all went down different directions because there's no topping what Jack Nicholson's Joker did. Um,
Yeah.
and you'll have to listen back to
Yeah.
the Batman '89 episode
Yeah,
to
there's
really,
almost
like
there's
where we
almost
go.
no point in going with a comic accurate Joker anymore because
No, exactly,
what you
because Jack Nicholson nailed it so much. You
yeah,
know,
and he also did it at a time where you could kind of do that because
that's true.
if you tried
Yeah,
to do a
yeah,
comic accurate Joker nowadays, it get laughed out of the cinema.
that's right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
now Joker's become because of Heath Ledger, effectively, has become such a. It means so much more, right? And however you think of that, that's the case now. That's the reality. Joker is now just means more than just a comic book villain. He's like a symbol.
Symbol of protests in some certain parts of the
Yeah.
world.
Um. So we could move on, or like, I
Yeah,
mean,
I would. This is the point where I would also say that the top three in this: Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, and Joaquin Phoenix. All three of them are probably like basically must sees at some point. Um,
yeah, they're all
they're in that.
phenomenal, and yeah, I
They
mean,
belong in
obviously,
that tier, kind of.
the nature of a ranking is that these are our subjective opinions, and people are free to disagree, and I'm sure we will. And but we encourage debate. I mean, Phil feels like they want to reach out, like send me some hate mail, whatever, crack on. Like
Yeah, get a
let's
few
talk
more
about it in
death
the
threats in your
comments, whatever.
mailbox.
I'd even be open to bringing on a guest if someone like feels passionately about something or they want to feel free to invite yourself on. Like send us an email or put a comment on YouTube, or you can contact us on Twitter or Instagram. That's all links in
Yeah,
the
get a debate
description.
queue for people who like
Yeah,
Heath
like
Ledger.
this is my opinion, our shared opinion actually, as it happens, where we Jack Nixon
You
is our
might make
favorite
a
joke,
mess. Might
best
be
joke.
making a mistake. You could end up getting like the number one Caesar Romero fan popping up and killing
Yeah,
both of
yeah,
us.
well, yeah, heaven forbid. But anyway,
Yeah, get a
we'll
joy
do
buzz
the
ready.
most Sigma moment now. So
Yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, because you said what was the one that you said as well? Like the
I said
fact.
the bit where he goes to the detectives, like, "Oh, what do you think?" Flicks a cigarette away, but then it's so instantly marred. I think your one's better. The very airs the guy. I think, yeah.
Yeah. No, that wasn't it. Because
Oh,
It's more like Sigma. It's a Sigma quote, really,
before
because
you
that's.
reveal to us the Sigma quote, can you read us the current rankings
Oh
for our
yes, of
audio
course.
list?
For
And not
those
visuals, because we don't have visual.
for those who don't know previous, from bottom to top, we have I believe in 11th place. Gone through a lot of films. We have um, in Batman Forever when well, Batman's Val Kilmer says women after a chat with Dr. Meridian Chase. We've got in Batman and Robin, Arnold saying as Mr. Freeze, "My passion thoughts and my bridal loan." Above that, we've got Adam West saying that he's a capitalist to explain to Kitka why he's got all these fancy gadgets on him, and definitely not because he's Batman. Above that, we've got from Catwoman when she slags off her boss, who's essentially Daggett in that film, but they don't say it. Um, Above that, we've got Christopher Walken as Max Schreck saying, actually, it very much is like that before pushing Catwoman out of a window to kill her. And above that, we've got Bane saying, "Do you feel in control?" to Daggett
Oh yeah.
before he kills him. Then above that, we've got from a previous episode Amanda Waller saying to Ben Affleck's Batman, saying, "You believe in friendship, I believe in leverage." Um, Above that, we've got in the fourth place, we've got "I didn't ask"
Yeah.
from Jack Nicholson's Joker, or Jack Napier at that point. And then in the top three, we've got "I own this hotel" from Christian Bale's Batman as Bruce Wayne flexing on Harvey Dent.
Mm.
In second place, we've got Daily Planet. Is that the one that I own, or was that the other guy from Batman vs Superman just flexing on Clark Kent as well to belittle him?
Mm.
And at the very top, from Batman Begins, we've got "I'm buying this hotel" from again Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne, which
Yep.
is
The
so many
ultimate
good, so many good
Sigma
quotes and
move
moments
down.
here.
And so what have we got for Joker? What was the one you pulled out?
My quote that I pulled was from his interview. Well, not interview, but when he's on the Murray Franklin show, where he says, he just straight up says like when Murray's like, "Oh, you think killing those three people was like, those three young men? You think that was funny?" And he says, "Yes, I do. I'm tired of pretending it's not." He's just straight
Balls.
up saying that killing people's funny, like on air, on live TV to like hundreds of thousands of people.
I don't know if that's such a Sigma move. I like it, but I don't know. I'm like trying to imagine that clip with the music over it. Um,
Yeah, Sigma tip 431, killing people's funny.
yeah.
I don't know, man. Like,
Mm,
this is the thing. All of these are quotes. They're not like just things that people do. I feel. And this is out of this entire film. I feel it's probably the most Sigma quote.
yeah, yeah, it is. But I think when he like snubs the handshake, I think it doesn't have to be spoken. I think that I think that's a little bit more Sigma. That's like a proper Sigma moment, you know. Maybe I don't
And
know.
as a
What do you think?
quote,
I mean,
as
I'll go with whatever you say. To be honest.
given at this point. But the thing is how we rank this, especially the fact it's not very
Yeah,
Sigma
it's
in
not going to go
general.
very high up either way, right? So nominate which one you want, and then we'll position it.
Well, so yeah, it's like yes, and I'm tired of pretending it's not.
Okay.
I would say that goes below Max Shrek's, but above Catwoman's.
Yeah, I
Because
was going to say it's going to go around Catwoman's one. I think that sounds good to me.
it's at that point where it goes below the pile of ones where it goes in the sort of the lower half where it's not
Yeah,
really, it's more kind of just trying to dig a quote out of a film.
yeah. Okay,
It's the point where Joker's one goes.
okay.
Unfortunately, sorry to a lot of sorry to those who think he's literally them, but he's not a Sigma male.
um, okay. And then finally, we're going to rank the film itself.
Hmm.
So this is going to be really interesting now, because I'm
Yeah,
not
do
I'm
we
not
recommend
decided
it?
at all where I would rank this film. It could there's every reason why it could go first, but you know,
First, even
sorry.
first, even above the
Well,
Dark Knight.
it could do, but then it depends what angle you're coming from. This is a Batman podcast at the end of the day, right? So we're doing the Batman
Yeah, that's
franchise. So in the view of it being like a Batman film, it's like you're more comparable with Catwoman, right? In a sense,
hmm.
in a way.
Yeah, because he's not even in it essentially.
But
Well,
do you know? but then as like a film, right? If we're comparing with films across like every other film, if we're ranking it just against Batman films, it won't be as high as it won't be among the best ones. But then if you're ranking it as a film itself, where you consider films like similar kind of films like Taxi Driver, like
Yeah, it's a tough
Drive, like
one because
Clockwork
it's
Orange,
self-contained.
fucking, you got a whole bunch of them, right?
Yeah, that's tough
Even
actually,
like
especially
even
looking at
shades of
this.
like American Psycho or Requiem for a Dream. There's like
Yeah,
little,
so that's what I was gonna say. His diary is a lot like Patrick Bateman's,
yeah.
Got like just
So
thinking. Yeah, I don't know.
it's a really
I'd
hard one.
say
It's a really tough one. What do you
this is the
think?
thing. This is more of how much we recommend it compared to other ones. I mean,
That's true. That's true.
yeah,
Well,
just a
I don't know. Like
disclaimer.
maybe one day we should do like a literally me rankings. Where we can rank against like Taxi Driver. Like I think Taxi Driver is definitely a better film and more iconic and more classic, and literally inspired this film. So, and Taxi Driver is one of them where I would put it in like a double recommend, like double thumbs up. That's like a film you have to see. Joker to a lesser extent, I think Joker is effectively today's Taxi Driver. And the
Hmm.
thing about this film is like I think it's a little bit too on the nose with certain moments. If I have to be really critical now, I think there's things that are said that don't need to be said. It's a little bit like show and tell rather than just like let the audience figure it out for themselves. A lot of these things, it does that a lot, but I think
Yeah,
it's also like very on the nose with a couple of things as well, where it
but I
didn't hit
guess also,
successfully.
I guess also with the fact that it's a Joker film about the Joker, that it's going to pull in so many people
Mm,
just based off that they do kind of have to spell it out in some parts.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
not saying that people who like the Joker are stupid. I'm just saying that so many people,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this
yeah,
was $1 billion. The amount of people who've watched it, probably gonna have to explain it for some of them.
yeah. That's true. Um,
I would personally put this. I feel like a criminal for putting this here, but I feel at least put it above Batman versus Superman in terms of how
oh
I'd
yeah, yeah,
recommend
yeah,
it.
without a doubt, without a doubt. You
But
think
in
about putting
terms
it
of
between Batman Begins and Batman vs Superman?
yeah, because I would if I had to, I'm thinking about this more as how I'd recommend it really. Because if it was up to me, I would say watch Batman Begins more than this, because this is really for if someone had seen the whole Dark Knight trilogy, and the Batman and so on. I would, but hadn't seen this, I'd probably recommend it to them. But not before recommending Batman '89, for example. Um,
It's a funny
but
one
then
because with this film, this the Joker or Joker, sorry, it had like a real like it had more of an emotional impact on me than any of these films like by far. I mean, in a sense, I mean, to be fair, in the Dark Knight, there's that real tension moment with the two fairies and stuff. I was like sweating, man, when I first saw that. Um, Batman '89, you have a lot of like oh wow, like really great moments there. Oh, it's a tough one. I think with this list though, yeah, maybe that would be a good place for it. Just behind Batman, but it is like an elite film. I would recommend it, but it's not like among these Batman films. It's definitely among the better ones. But
yeah,
I think
it's
in
in a,
terms of
yeah.
being
Again, I
like
still
it's
there's that
still like if
imaginary
someone
thought
told
of
me
like
like if someone wanted to ask the film that it is, it's not really a Batman film. It's not a Batman film at all. It's barely even a Joker film, ironically, right? It's more like
yeah,
it's a film about mental health, about it's like one of these loner kind of cinema films, right? Like literally me, whatever you want to like label that subgenre as, right? And if I'm thinking about it in those terms, I would put this below Taxi Driver, for example. Taxi Driver is one of them which belongs in this like elite bracket of like double thumbs up, whereas Joker's more like it's great, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't watch it before the film like that, or for
yeah.
example,
Which is
I think
why
for example maybe I think Blade Runner 2049 as well. That's like it kind of belongs in that genre as well. Like Officer K, I think Ryan Gosling. That's very much one of those kind of films as well, more so than Joker. So and a better film in general. So I don't know. I think maybe that is quite a fair position to put it between Batman Begins
yeah,
and I should just for the listeners, we've got number one,
yeah.
The Dark Knight, number two, Dark Knight Rises, number three, Batman, number four, Batman Begins, number five, Batman vs Superman, number six, Batman Returns, number seven, Batman's the movie, Batman 1966. Number 8, Suicide Squad. Number 9, Batman Forever. Number 10, Catwoman, and number 11, Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
So we're
And
putting
then
Joker 5th then.
yeah, we're putting it between Batman vs Superman and Batman Begins. Now that you say we're putting it 5th, I feel less bad about that.
Okay, I mean, I think there's like a very clear gap between Joker and Batman vs Superman as
Yeah,
well.
that's where I put. Yeah, that's where like we say, like the imaginary dotted line of.
Yeah, I mean the way this podcast is now, we're doing thumbs up, thumbs down, double thumbs up, right? And this is
Yeah,
obviously a
because
thumbs
at
up
this
film.
point,
And
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
doing it by numbers doesn't really.
yeah,
It's
it's
never
like there's yeah, it's yeah,
so
but
many problems with it.
exactly, it's yeah, but I think for this one we're gonna put it there. It's a fantastic film. People should definitely watch it. And yeah, it's a real experience. And actually, I didn't expect it to improve. That was a film I was just prepared to watch once and not really revisit. I just saw it, but actually, I think it improved on the second viewing for me personally.
Yeah, yeah, This is another film which I wish I could kind of see in cinema again because that's where it was best experienced for me.
Yeah, I missed out on that one. Yeah, that must
Yeah,
have been amazing.
especially for the first time. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, there you go, ladies and
yes,
gentlemen. We've come to the end of our rank and review of Joker. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, follow us on Spotify and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. Leave us some comments, some feedback if you like. And we'll be back next week with Justice League.
yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Zack
no
Snyder's
less.
Justice League. So me and Henry are going to spend 4 hours of our fucking week watching that film. You're going to be watching it for the first time. I'm going to be watching it for the second time. Oh, fucking hell. So there you go. Final word from you, Henry? Just drop
Um,
that fanger on you.
yeah, this is a good film, but it's not an instruction manual. Always remember that.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week for Zack Snyder's Justice League. Same bat time, same bat channel.